The King's Avatar audiobook by Kevin Chapter 1501. Sneaky acting translator. Namyami editor. Namyami jump jump jump. The two characters were both jumping non-stop on the manor wall. Windward Formation didn't use any skills to disrupt him, nor did Desert Dust use any techniques to harass him. But just this kind of jumping and climbing was already enough to render the watching players dumbstruck. The map came from an in-game environment, and the online arena also had this map. With the vast number of Glory players, there were players who had visited this manor in universe, and of course there were also those who liked to play on this map in the arena. But to so easily leap and scale the side of this manor, this was evidently outside of the experience of ordinary players. After this match, those Glory players who liked this map would probably once again begin to pay attention to this kind of technique of scaling the manor wall. It was in this manner that professional matches were at the forefront of Glory trends. And of the two people on the field right now, Wei Chen was more familiar with the map, while Han Wenqing, having played so many battles, was extremely adaptive. Neither player's controls revealed any flaws, but Han Wenqing's Desert Dust was still slightly faster. This wasn't because of any difference in skill, it was a result of the differences between their characters. Strikers were simply more nimble than warlocks and had superior movement and jumping ability. But he probably couldn't catch up, right? Looking at the distance between the two characters, if they set the roof as the target, it didn't seem like Desert Dust had enough time to catch up to Windward Formation. Then, once Windward Formation reached the roof, he definitely wouldn't hold back in unleashing a harsh attack down upon Desert Dust, right? Wei Chen didn't disappoint. Tossing stones at someone who had fallen into a well, that sort of thing was something he loved to do. Little Han catch. As soon as he successfully reached the roof, the panic he'd shown earlier completely disappeared. Trash talk was joyfully resurrected in the match chat. Nothing had even happened to Han Wenqing yet, but Tyranny's diehard fans were already getting nervous. This Wei Chen clearly was limited in his ability, but as soon as he achieved a slight advantage, he simply made people extremely uncomfortable. That sort of completely unconcealed, dirty and shameless play, it really made people both annoyed and fearful. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Standing on the high ground, Windward Formation waved his death's hand, letting loose curse arrows, and he sent them scattering in various directions, making them fall like chaotic rain. They pattered down, taking advantage of the fact that there were limited footholds on the wall and very little space to dodge. But Desert Dust's arms trembled, reinforced iron bones. Super armor was activated, and then Han Wenqing directly ignored the damage he took from curse arrows and continued to use his fastest speed to travel the shortest path. Wei Chen smiled slightly, and Windward Formation continued to sway his scepter. Hexagram prison. Suddenly, 6 beams of light appeared in the air, falling straight down. And the prediction involved in casting this skill wasn't cheap at all. Wei Chen correctly calculated the path Han Wenqing would take and predicted where Desert Dust would step. But the skill didn't target the footholds, it targeted the mid-air path Desert Dust took as he jumped. This was naturally harder than locking in on the footholds, but it was harder for the opponent to dodge, as well. Wei Chen's reaction speed and hand speed weren't fast enough, but he was very confident in his accuracy when he stood up here and could calmly cast skills. The pillars of light came down, and it looked like the mid-air Desert Dust had no way of dodging. But just when it looked like he was about to hit, Desert Dust's body suddenly plunged. 1,000-ton drop. Han Wenqing controlled his character to use this skill. Desert Dust plummeted, even faster than the pillars of light were coming down. Just like that, he instantly put some distance between himself and the attack, and his foot landed on another foothold. Hua 1,000-ton drop was an attacking skill, When his foot hit this foothold, it was instantly crushed by this stomp and rubble skittered down. But it was enough for desert dust to get some force, and he leapt to the side. The 6 pillars of light brushed right past him. Desert dust successfully dodged this attack and continued upward without hesitation. Tusk, 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 starting to wreck this place again. Careful not to wreck yourself, Wei Chen reproached him in the chat. For Han Wenqing, who still hadn't successfully made it to the top, breaking a foothold really wasn't good news for him at all. Death's hand waved once again. Soul Strike. Black light flashed outward. Warlock skills carried many annoying side effects, and this skill was no exception. Soul Strike, as the name implied, directly attacked the target's soul, causing the target to enter a trance state. In-game, this meant that the target's controls had no effect. Even though the effects of this skill lasted only for a very short amount of time, this was undoubtedly a powerful interrupt skill, and it could interrupt not only casts, but any sort of movement. Take the current situation for example. Leaping up the wall required extremely precise controls. Jumping a distance of 3 body lengths versus 4 body lengths certainly required different amounts of jumping force, and this was all dependent upon the player to control and react. At this moment, if someone was about to initiate a 4 body length jump and was currently adjusting the amount of power to put into the jump, and was suddenly hit by a soul strike, then the jump power might only reach that of a 2 body length jump, and the rest of the power would be lost. With that, trying to jump a 4 body length gap with only a 2 body length jump, wouldn't he just fall? And Wei Chen had seized upon this moment exactly. The black light flashed in front of Desert Dust, who was just landing, but his body swung, the black light just barely flashed past Desert Dust. This soul strike, Han Wenqing had actually managed to dodge it. Oh, the Tyranny fans, letting out a breath in relief, were very happy. This time, Wei Chen didn't feel like spitting any words in the chat. His mood grew very serious. If this soul strike hadn't successfully interrupted Desert Dust's jump power, then that could just be attributed to luck. But it had missed altogether. How? Wei Chen was very confident in the accuracy of his judgment and control. This attack he had calculated very well, but he had still been too slow. Wei Chen hurriedly began casting another skill. Binding Curse. Another flash of light, but it missed again. In such an advantageous condition, he had actually missed 2 times in a row. The happy fans lamented his bad luck, but Wei Chen knew that that definitely wasn't the case. After one miss, the second time, his prediction and controls had been even more careful. This second miss shouldn't be because of any problem on his end. Han Wenqing adjusted the rhythm. Watching the match, Ye Xiu had already seen what the problem was. The adjustment is very subtle, Fang Rui said. It seemed like a very normal adjustment, but coming from Han Wenqing, suddenly it seemed rather abnormal. Han Wenqing, who had always been a very open and direct player, would actually use this kind of fine-tuning on his rhythm, so slight that it was extremely difficult to detect. Has this guy really become so interesting now? Ye Xiu mused. Windward formation continued to cast. Another curse, another miss. Ha 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 ha. The Tyranny fans in the stadium had begun to jeer and shout. This dirty playing guy, he tried to play dirty but his attacks missed. It was extremely rewarding to watch. Old Wei still hasn't noticed. Fang Rui furrowed his brow. Even though Wei Chen might not compare to them in terms of pro experience, he had never left glory after so many years, so his eyes were sharp. Han Wenqing's adjustment might be slight, but not so slight that Wei Chen wouldn't be able to detect it, right? Just as he said this, the 4th spell missed as well. This is bad, Fang Rui shouted, slapping his leg. A curse missing wasn't a big deal, but the key was that this 4th curse, compared to the others, was clearly a bit more rushed. Instead of patiently waiting for the best opportunity, Wei Chen had cast it immediately after the 3rd one missed, and hurriedly released it as soon as it was ready. The panic of climbing the wall was resurfacing. Missing all of these skills in a row made Wei Chen very anxious. After the fourth curse missed, he again hurriedly began casting a fifth. But by this time, Desert Dust was already almost at the roof. This skill was probably Wei Chen's last chance at a merciless attack. If he missed again, Wei Chen would lose his positional advantage. And this time Wei Chen seemed even more panicked because he used an even faster skill. Soul Slice. A blade of black light flashed outward toward Desert Dust. But just by looking at the moment he released the skill, the experienced players were already sighing. He released it early. Huang Xiaoshan had already texted such a lament to Yu Wenzhou, and he was already in the process of writing a new one too. Boss Wei's a bit too nervous. But just as he was burying his head in the text, an unexpected situation suddenly emerged on stage. The Soul Slice didn't hit. Desert Dust stepped on the final foothold, but just when he was about to reach the roof, but his character suddenly started falling. How? Everyone was shocked. The broadcast director reacted swiftly, splitting the screen to show a replay. That moment that Desert Dust landed on that last foothold, it shattered from the impact and he fell with it. Little hand catch. High-spirited trash talk once again floated into the chat. Everyone was dumbfounded, including Wei Chen's teammates. Fuck. Fang Rui was slapping his leg again. As expected of the master of dirty playing, as soon as he saw this result, he instantly understood what Wei Chen had done. He'd been pretending. It was all an act. This guy had also probably detected the slight adjustments Han Wenqing had made to his rhythm, but these adjustments were changing often, so even if he could tell the rhythm was changing, it would be very difficult for him to grasp it. And so, Wei Chen pretended that he couldn't grasp it at all. He missed skill after skill, and he even adjusted his own rhythm to give off the impression that he was panicked and rushed. Even Fang Rui, this master of dirty play, had been fooled. Did it even have to be said how superb this acting was? And so the final killing blow simply came from landing on the final foothold. How come it didn't hold? Wei Chen had messed with it, of course. Even as Desert Dust fell, Han Wenqing was still resolute. He pulled his view downward and could already see another foothold below him, but whoosh, black light flashed past. The Soul Slice cut that foothold. The missed Soul Slice had never been targeting Desert Dust. Wei Chen put on a good show. And at this moment, Death's hand flashed with magic energy, gathering into a rain cloud, chaotic rain. The skill's cooldown had finally ended, and it was once again cast by windward formation. And this time, Desert Dust had absolutely no way of dodging. The chaotic rain poured down, bringing the confusion, and Desert Dust continued to plummet. There might have been more footholds further down, but under the confusion status, how could he possibly find them? And at the very bottom, on the ground, unnatural wind blew. The powerful skill, Winding Wraiths, was already ready to welcome Desert Dust. Huang Xiaoshan, who had still been in the middle of expressing his emotions to Yu Wenzhou in a text, stared with his mouth hanging open. He put his phone down. The battle was decided. A target controlled by a warlock to this extent had no possibility of escape. In the deciding battle of the group arena, Wei Chen won. In the group arena, Happy won. Chapter 1502, Rivals of 10 Years Meet Once More. Chapter 1502, Rivals of 10 Years Meet Once More. Translator, Namiyami Editor, Namiyami, heh, little Han, you're still too green. This was the last message Wei Chen left in the group arena chat, something that was enough to make all glory players spit blood. If even Han Wenqing was still too green, then was there even anyone who could be considered a veteran? That boast was just completely illogical. However, this was Happy's home stadium. As Happy fans, this was something they could totally laugh about. However, for Tyranny fans, it was frustrating. They wouldn't fear losing, but losing to a guy like this was absolutely disgusting, especially when the one who lost was their most respected captain, Han Wenqing. No one would blame Han Wenqing for this loss. They had seen his usual courage and determination. It was this opponent. He was too sly, too tricky, too shameless perhaps on some level. This kind of opponent was the bane of hand-winking straightforward style. The group arena had ended, and the two players walked out of their booths simultaneously. Wei Chen, of course, wore a face full of joy, waving at the crowd while shamelessly making a whole lap around the stadium. Even the wild jeers when he passed by the stands for the guest team fans didn't dampen his smile. In fact, his smile just grew, and he was even more enthusiastic in his waving. The security were restless, as if prepared to face a monster. These were tyranny fans they were talking about. Was this guy looking to get killed, provoking the tyranny fans like that? They hurriedly arranged for more people over here while they sent people to try and talk Wei Chen down from his celebrating. Wei Chen didn't give them any trouble, finishing his rounds and returning to the Happy player bench. Happy's members had stood to welcome their hero back. "Sit, sit, please sit." Wei Chen energetically waved his hands at them. Everyone laughed. None of them said anything about the way he was behaving because they all knew how important this victory was to Wei Chen, how hard he worked for it. "It's all up to you guys now," Wei Chen then said. Next up was the team competition, and he wasn't in the lineup. "Don't worry," Ye Xiu nodded at him. Huff, Wei Chen exhaled heavily and looked back at the screen. Everything he had accomplished, the victory he had earned, it was all clearly recorded there. This might not be the most spectacular victory he had claimed, but it was definitely the most satisfying. Time wouldn't let him remain in this moment, but he knew he would never forget any of this. With the group arena at an end, Happy had a 1-point lead. The effect of their victory on their morale was significant, though realistically speaking, a lead of 1 point was negligible in the team competition. Neither team returned to their battle prep rooms, making their arrangements for the team competition right then and there. The match was only just beginning. The two teams made surprisingly synchronized pep talks. For Happy, it was mostly reminding everyone that they shouldn't drop their guard due to their lead from the group arena. For Tyranny, it was about not letting the group arena results get them down. However, the gist of both was the same. A 1-point lead was nothing. Both teams were solemn. After boasting for a while, Wei Chen tactfully quietened down, analyzing their path of action in the team competition seriously with the others. Time flew by, and the referee was already on the outskirts of the stage, staring at his watch and getting ready to call the teams to the stage. Team Tyranny, with a 1-point disadvantage, rose from their seats first and headed for the stage without needing prompting from the referee. Han Wenqing, Lin Jingyan, Zhang Jiao, Qin Maiyun, Zhang Xinji, and 6th player Bai Yanfei. This was the formation that Tyranny used last season to charge into the championships, as well as what people viewed as their core formation. It was just that Han Wenqing, Lin Jingyan, and Zhang Jiao were on rotation this season, and with the addition of their new little general Song Qiying, this formation rarely appeared. It didn't even appear in the first round of the playoffs. Yet now, against Happy in their first away game, Tyranny used the formation they had used to aim for the championships last season. Tyranny's fans started clapping, screaming, cheering their team on. And on Happy's side, Captain Ye Xiu merely glanced over nonchalantly when the cheering started before turning back and continuing to speak. However, the match was about to start, so Ye Xiu finished his pep talk with a few last sentences. "Let's go." With that, Team Happy's players also stood. Ye Xiu, Suma Cheng, Fang Rui, Tang Ru, and Wenyi, none of them were unexpected, but the last player, "Who is this?" Pan Lin inquired in the broadcast, hesitant. "Luo Jai. Happy is putting Luo Jai," Pan Lin said, shocked. Luo Jai. The name felt foreign on his tongue because he rarely ever had to say this name in the broadcast. In the regular season, Happy rarely sent Luo Jai up. It was only near the end of the season that he saw more match time. However, Luo Jai was different from Wei Chen. Wei Chen's sudden participation at the end of the regular season was clearly to help him adjust his state in preparation for the playoffs. But what about Luo Jai? Luo Jai was a rookie, a young player. His participation was, everyone guessed, a form of acquiring battle experience while the circumstances allowed it. From these few matches, everyone could see that Luo Jai was special, but he wasn't particularly skilled yet. Perhaps he was a player with potential, with a future ahead of him, but right now, he needed more time to grow. That's what everyone thought. However, Luo Jai had appeared in the second round of the playoffs, in the roster for Happy and Tyranny's team competition. Is there some mistake? Pan Lin wasn't sure if he should believe his eyes. What if Luo Jai just so happened to stand up? But it wasn't so. The team lineups were already being displayed on the big screen. Not only was Luo Jai's name among them, it was in the starting five as well. Happy had arranged for Tang Ru to be the sixth player. It wasn't possible that this was just a chance for a rookie to acquire battle experience, not here in the playoffs. On this battlefield, there was no holding back. Then, could it be that Luo Jai was a weapon that Happy planned on using against Tyranny? Discussions erupted in the venue and online. Pan Lin once again asked for Li Yibo to give his professional analysis. In the end, Li Yibo managed to avoid a proper explanation by explaining Luo Jai's playstyle. The two sides lined up, facing each other on the stage. The first to shake hands were, naturally, the two captains, rivals of 10 years. The two had faced each other in all 4 finals of the first 4 seasons. It was also on this stage that their paths became intimately entwined, pitted against one another. In the next seasons, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the two teams didn't clash. Excellent Era began their fall from grace, and Han Wenking too began to fall. Everything spoke to them, telling them that their era had ended. Professional glory had entered a new era of those that came after. Then in Season 8, Ye Xiu retired, bidding this stage farewell, and Han Wenking became the only first-generation player that was still struggling through this battlefield. That season, Team Tyranny was quickly eliminated from the playoffs. The people sighed wistfully, witnessing the end of an era. Who would have thought that in the 9th season Team Tyranny would invite a bunch of veterans and stand once more at the highest stage of glory? Then in the 10th season, Ye Xiu led his very own team back into the league. Now these two once again were shaking hands on this very stage where their rivalry grew. Had that era returned? Seeing this scene, some older fans of glory found their minds wandering. The battles between these two, it was the memories of that past era. Everyone thought that era had ended, but how come these two were meeting here once more? You've improved, Ye Xiu said, shaking Han Wenking's hand. They were rivals, but perhaps it was he that understood the one standing in front of him the most. Once upon a time, Ye Xiu had put his everything into defeating this man. He was familiar with Han Wenking's awareness, mechanics, methods, and he would be the first to notice the slightest change. Your unspecialized isn't bad either, Han Wenking replied. He had changed, but he definitely hadn't changed nearly as much as this guy. In the resolution of his pro career, he had given up on his best and most familiar battle mage for the strange class known as the unspecialized. However, Han Wenking understood more than anyone how the unspecialized might suit Ye Xiu so, because like Ye Xiu knew him, he also knew Ye Xiu. Glory textbook, this title was no exaggeration. He was more knowledgeable than one could imagine. It's not too late to surrender, Ye Xiu said. Are you talking to me? Han Wenking's reply was cold. Surrender, that word didn't exist in his dictionary. Ye Xiu chuckled but said no more, shaking hands with each of Tyranny's members one by one. Zhang Xinji, Zhang Jiao, Lin Jingyan. These were old opponents that he couldn't be more familiar with. The so-called, that era, wasn't something created by just the two of them. Countless people had already left this battlefield, but who knew if they were watching the ones who were still fighting for glory from whatever corner of the world they were in? The players of the two teams headed towards their booths, their characters loading into the map. Some of these characters were more than familiar to the public, but some had only appeared beginning this season. Perhaps, compared to the players, these characters would be better at preserving the legacy of glory. When the day came that Ye Xiu, Han Wenqing, Zhang Jiao and the others left this battlefield for good, the characters that they once used would continue to carry everything they had left behind. The second round of the playoffs, Happy's home game against Tyranny, let the team competition begin. Chapter 1503, A Shift in Style. Chapter 1503, A Shift in Style. Translator, Namyami Editor, Namyami Team Competition Map, Full Moon Forest. As soon as the name of the map came out, Pan Lin and Li Yibo immediately started introducing the characteristics of the map. Full Moon Forest had the name Forest in it, but in reality, the forest set the boundaries for the map. The scenario for the setting was a little village inside a forest. The village had a lot of content, but the layout of the map was relatively simple. It didn't have complicated intertwining alleyways like the larger city maps. The entire village only had 4 buildings. The southwest corner had a blacksmith shop. The northeast corner had a grocery market. The southeast corner had a storehouse and a watchtower. The northwest corner was the residential area. The houses were built on top of trees with drawbridges connecting the trees together. Directly to the south of the village was a small pond. To the north was an altar, which was the most open area in the map. There were several large trees providing shade scattered throughout the village. Although it couldn't be considered a forest, it provided a good amount of cover. In general, the map was not a place for a direct confrontation. Very few teams chose simple maps in the playoffs. Every team wanted to utilize their home game advantage to the fullest and pick a map that best suited their team. After introducing the map, Pan Lin and Li Yibo began analyzing what advantages Happy would have as the home team. This topic was much more complicated than an introduction of the map. Pan Lin mainly became a question asker, giving Li Yibo the main spotlight. Li Yibo could only force himself to analyze the issue at hand. Every few sentences, he would chuckle an awkward ha-ha to cover up his lack of confidence. As the two discussed the topic, the match officially began. Happy spawned at the southwest corner, surrounded on 3 sides by trees. From afar, they could see the blacksmith shop to the northeast. Tyranny spawned at the opposite end of the map at the northeast corner. Their spawn point was the exact same as Happy's spawn point, surrounded on 3 sides by trees. From afar, they could see a grocery market to the southwest. The two teams went along the only path available. Not long afterwards, a brilliant blue pond appeared to the east of Happy, while an altar appeared to the west of Tyranny. Team Happy was the home team. They naturally had a plan in mind. Once the pond became visible, they had more directions to choose from. In the end, Happy moved towards the northwest towards the residential area. On the other hand, once Tyranny had more directions to choose from, they immediately slowed down. As the away team, they weren't as familiar with the map compared to the home team, so slowing down the pace was normal. However, as Team Tyranny, slowing down out of caution was very rare. On one hand, it could be seen how highly Tyranny looked upon Happy. On another hand, it could be seen that it wasn't just Han Wenqing adjusting, but rather the entire team. All of them were changing their usual pace under their captain's lead. Li Yibo had once been a part of Tyranny, so he was very acute to these changes and started confidently discussing this topic. As for the home team advantages that Happy had with this map and the logic behind choosing this map, he put them aside for now. The two teams moved on their own accord. Neither of them saw each other. It felt like the calm before a storm. Team Happy's movements were decisive. When they reached the residential area, they began hiding. In the end, Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm was the only one who hadn't hidden himself in a residence. Instead, he went along the road, cutting across towards the altar. Everyone was stunned, because the careful tyranny just happened to be moving towards the altar as well. Li Yibo was talking about this area too. There was no pressure from the map disadvantage for tyranny because of the openness of the altar area. But just when Li Yibo was talking about tyranny's choice, Ye Xiu moved towards the altar a step ahead of them. As a result, Lord Grimm soon came into tyranny's line of sight. Kakaka. Gunfire immediately came from Team Tyranny's side. Zhang Jiao took the initiative and had dazzling 100 Blossoms start their offensive. Han Wenqing was always the first to rush out, but when facing his long-time rival, he remained calm and collected. Not only did he not immediately charge forward, he stopped. It was a 5v1 confrontation, but Tyranny unexpectedly didn't immediately pounce on the opportunity. Tyranny is playing quite cautiously. Pan Lin emphasized the word quite. What? No one's coming. Seeing how Tyranny wasn't coming, Ye Xiu immediately started taunting them. Tyranny's players were old generals, plus with their familiarity with Ye Xiu's personality, no one was bothered by this bit of taunting. Tyranny's 5 players ignored him. Zhang Jiao and Qin Maiyun, the 2 gunners, split to the left and right, expanding their team's field of vision while forming a pincer towards Lord Grimm. Han Wenqing, Lin Jingyan and Zhang Xinji formed a triangle. Desert Dust and Dark Thunder at the front, while Zhang Xinji's immovable rock stood at the back. The 3 slowly advanced. Tyranny wasn't like before. In the past, the team would have charged forward as if they were trying to cut open a mountain. Now they were gently carrying out their offense as if they were droplets of water grinding down stone. The current tyranny was almost unrecognizable. Ye Xiu didn't continue with his trash talk. He had Lord Grimm retreat back. He had no choice but to retreat. Tyranny's formation looked to be very simple, but Ye Xiu was able to tell that their formation could cover a large area. At the same time, they could shrink and extend freely, instantly converging into Tyranny's specialty, a frontal assault. Looks like they've got a few new tricks up their sleeves. It seemed to be just a few simple adjustments, but it left a deep impression in Ye Xiu. He could see that this formation was finally bringing out Zhang Xinji's talents to the fullest. Zhang Xinji's style conflicted with Tyranny's. After a series of adjustments from the team, they were beginning to assimilate together perfectly. One of the 4 master tacticians, Zhang Xinji. The Zhang Xinji who won the championships as a starter in the main roster in his first year. His potential was still far from being cleanly realized. Ye Xiu retreated. He chose to retreat without even attempting anything. He was clear and decisive, leaving the hesitation for Tyranny. Lord Grimm came alone. He obviously couldn't 1v5, and it was obvious what Happy was planning. Tyranny wasn't familiar with the map, so they didn't know what sort of ambushes Happy could set up. Zhang Jiao and Qin Maiyun scouted their 2 sides and confirmed that there was no possibility of a pincer. Tyranny had just come from the back. From how much time had passed, it wasn't possible for Happy to have circled around them. In that case, Ye Xiu had come alone to bait them into an ambush. Now that he had retreated, if Tyranny advanced forward, they would certainly be caught in an ambush. However, if they did not advance and stalled for time, they would give an opportunity for Happy to circle around them. Zhang Jiao and Qin Maiyun had confirmed that their left and right sides were safe. The altar itself was a flat area, but there were numerous ambush spots in the surroundings. The altar wasn't that large either, so using the surroundings as cover to set up an ambush was a big threat. If Tyranny didn't move, would Happy seize the opportunity to surround them? No one could tell what plans the 2 teams had in mind. Everyone could only wait and see. Tyranny didn't move. Happy didn't move. Tyranny didn't give chase. As a result, Ye Xiu didn't have Lord Grimm continue retreating. Happy's 4 characters, who were hiding in the residential area, stayed still too. The 10 years of rivalry didn't immediately set off blazing sparks. Instead, the two sides were carefully probing each other's actions. It had to be known that with their understanding of each other, neither side originally needed to do any probing to know the other side's thoughts. However, Ye Xiu had a new team behind him, and Han Wenking's unyielding fierceness that had been a part of him for 10 years had begun to become more flexible. The two pro players at the ends of their career, the two rivals of 10 years, were still as diligent as ever, looking for ways to break through. It was because of this that the two sides were more careful. They wanted to be the first to see through their changed opponent, while not letting themselves be seen through. Ye Xiu didn't retreat. Han Wenking didn't advance. The confrontation lasted nearly 30 seconds, when suddenly, Tyranny headed diagonally in the 10 o'clock direction. This movement had been as swift as the wind. Tyranny's original style was instantly displayed. When the team had been making adjustments, they didn't let go of their strongest and most reliable weapon. However, Ye Xiu had seen this weapon many times and didn't even raise an eyebrow towards it. Instead, when he saw the fierce charge, he smirked. "What are you charging blindly for? You guys aren't surrounded." Ye Xiu typed into the chat. How could he not see through Tyranny's intent? The standoff was to let Happy make their setup, then before Happy could complete their encirclement they would suddenly burst out and break through it. "Yes, how could you not see it?" Zhang Xinji replied. "Then what are you planning?" Ye Xiu asked. "Positioning." Zhang Xinji replied. Ye Xiu was surprised. When he took a look at Tyranny's position right now, Tyranny was outside of the altar. Behind them was a flat path which they could either advance or retreat from. To their left and right was the forest. Compared to their previous position at the center of the altar, they were much less in the open and in a far better position than before. Li Yibo had analyzed as such. After listeners heard his analysis, they couldn't help but question it. Is that all? Everyone thought to themselves. All they did was move from one place to another. Had Tyranny really needed to be so careful? If Tyranny had just strolled over, what would happen? Ye Xiu's Lord Grim would rush at them and try to stop them. That was what everyone else thought, but not Ye Xiu. It was a very simple movement, but this simple movement showed Tyranny's spirit. The Tyranny of before had centered around their captain, Han Wenking. The Tyranny of today had finally begun shifting their center towards their vice-captain, Zhang Xinji. Chapter 1504. A lot of familiar things. Chapter 1504. A lot of familiar things. Translator. Namyumi editor. Namyumi no openings. Zhang Xinji made the least amount of mistakes out of any player in the Glory Alliance, and this characteristic was one of his most notable strengths. Now, it was being realized in Team Tyranny's tactics. In the past, Tyranny's bold and aggressive playstyle made it impossible not to make mistakes. As a result, they relied on overwhelming force to push their way through. But now, things were different. By waiting for half a minute, not only did they not walk into a trap, they promptly interrupted a potential play from Happy before positioning themselves into a more open space, which allowed for them to retreat or advance as they wished. The hidden danger was silently resolved in this way. Perhaps only someone like Ye Xiu, who had a deep understanding of Tyranny, could these sort of changes clearly. After moving to the wide open street, Tyranny finally began scouting ahead. Han Wenking's desert dust and Lin Jingyan's dark forest at the front, Zhang Jiao's dazzling 100 blossoms and Qin Mayan's -9 degrees at the back on the left and right, respectively, and Zhang Xinji's immovable rock at the center. The team maintained this formation as they approached Lord Grim. With every step, they seemed to be finding new information. Retreat. With how calm and collected Tyranny was moving, retreating would not bait them into action. Advance? What good would that do? It wasn't like he could charge in and 1v5. However, Ye Xiu's Lord Grim really did advance forward, matching their every step. Before Tyranny's fans could react to Ye Xiu's insane decision, two players dashed out from Tyranny's formation. dazzling 100 blossoms, -9 degrees. The two long-ranged gunners unexpectedly took the lead, while Han Wenking's Desert Dust and Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder continued to move forward at their original pace. Gunfire burst forth. The two gunners focused their fire towards Lord Grim. Retreat! No, the two gunners had blocked off the area behind Lord Grim. The two were sealing off his retreat path. Retreating would be exactly what they wanted. Don't retreat. The moment the gunfire stopped Lord Grim from escaping, Desert Dust and Dark Thunder suddenly sped up, dashing towards Lord Grim. An assault from all sides was completed in an instant. Beautiful, Pan Lin cried out. Ye Xiu's response to this beautiful offensive was extremely simple. He opened up his umbrella as a shield and pointed it in -9 degrees direction. Peng, 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 peng. The bullets bouncing off of his umbrella sounded quite peculiar. With the bullets blocked, Lord Grim was about to stroll his way out of danger, when white flames suddenly burst from the ground. Sacred fire. Taking advantage of the fact that Ye Xiu's vision was blocked from his own umbrella shield, Zhang Xinji cast a sacred fire, surrounding Lord Grim in white flames. 3 seconds of silence, 3 seconds of opportunity. In an instant, dazzling light swallowed the area. Lord Grim's figure became blurry as Desert Dust and Dark Thunder dashed into the light. The crowd let out a cry of surprise. Tyranny's sudden burst of speed from their initial slow and methodical manner was truly shocking. Tyranny's tactics had become more varied. Not only did it not weaken their offense, it upped their explosiveness by another level through an abrupt change in tempo. In addition, their change in tactics didn't leave behind a single opening. To allow for a sudden increase in tempo, every step needed to be carefully thought out for there to be not opening. Sharpshooter attacks were single-target attacks and were very easy to block with a shield. So what if you blocked them? There's a sacred fire laying in wait. Facing such a watertight arrangement, even if the experienced Ye Xiu could see through it, what could he do? There was simply no way to break out. Ye Xiu got careless. Even Li Yibo, who had become even more careful for this match, dared to criticize Ye Xiu. That was what everyone else was thinking too. Going alone to challenge an entire team was brave, but challenging the team and then getting killed for it was embarrassing. Ye Xiu was in an extremely dangerous and embarrassing situation, yet there were still no signs of movement from the rest of Happy. The broadcast had split the screen to show the perspectives of the 4 players on Happy, and they could definitely see Lord Grim's predicament. However, to everyone's surprise, they stuck to their original plan and didn't go over to help. They can't be that inflexible, can they? It was hard to avoid asking this question. It was true that pre-match preparations were important, but the other 70% of the match depended on the team's response to the circumstances of the match. There was no team who would do nothing seeing this situation, unless they were confident that they needed to make any moves. The camera once again locked onto Lord Grim. Lord Grim had already been swallowed by the 100 Blossom style, and Han Wenking and Lin Jingyan needed only a few more steps to reach him. During these 3 seconds, Lord Grim wouldn't be able to use any skills. Inside the light, a blurry shape could be seen spinning round and round in a circle. How long could 3 seconds be? After a few circles, the blurry figure in the light suddenly sped up. In the next instant, Lord Grim could be seen clear as day in front of everyone. Lord Grim had escaped from the 100 Blossoms besiegement, while under the 3 seconds of silence from sacred fire. The crowd was silent in shock. A replay quickly appeared on the big screen. This time, the camera zoomed in, paying close attention to Lord Grim. All sorts of bullets and grenades had been thrown at Lord Grim. Lord Grim couldn't use any skills. He could only wave around the umbrella in his hands, blocking what he could as he moved. 3 seconds later, through a skill that increased his movement speed, he broke out from the 100 Blossom style. The viewers continued to be at a loss. Despite seeing the slow-motion replay, they still couldn't understand. How could he escape by just blocking a few attacks? Only Zhang Jiao understood. Only the person who created the 100 Blossom style could. Only he knew that Lord Grimm's spinning umbrella wasn't just to block some damage. It was to block the attacks that the 100 Blossom style used to restrict the opponent. It was because he blocked those few skills that the light of the 100 Blossom style still existed, yet did little to obstruct its target. After the sacred fire wore off, Ye Xiu immediately rushed out with a movement skill, leaving Han Wenqing and Lin Jingyan in the dust. In other words, even though tyranny's tactics had no openings, Zhang Jiao's 100 Blossom style had been seen through by Ye Xiu. Ye Xiu's understanding of Zhang Jiao was not much worse than his understanding of his long-time rival Han Wenqing. The 100 Blossom style, not just this season, just counting the past, it had been around for a whole 6 years. As Zhang Jiao's attitude changed, the 100 Blossom style had also changed, but no matter how much the style changed, there were only so many Spitfire skills. By understanding the purpose of each skill, it was often possible to counter the style. The theory sounded simple, but there were only a handful who could do it in practice. Ye Xiu had done it because of his understanding of the style and his experience. After seeing the role of each player in Tyranny's formation, he was able to immediately deduce Zhang Jiao's aim during this period of time. As for how Zhang Jiao would use his skills, with how diverse the 100 Blossom style was, there was no way for Ye Xiu to predict it 100%, but he could at least make the mental preparations to defend against the most important attacks. The other part was that Lord Grimm had a very big shield. Lord Grimm rushed out from the encirclement and swiftly retreated. Tyranny's 2 long-ranged characters chased after him, but the tempo of the 2 fighters immediately slowed. They didn't pursue him relentlessly because they didn't forget that the other 4 members of Happy were very likely lying in wait for them here. As a result, once Lord Grimm escaped from Tyranny's attack range, Tyranny slowed down as a whole. They went back into a stable formation and slowly approached 1 step at a time. Patience. They were playing very patiently. They had been dreaming of winning the championships for so many years. What was a few seconds of patience to them? Tyranny steadily pushed forward, making Ye Xiu's challenge towards them seem childish. Even if had escaped from what Li Yibo thought as impossible to escape from in terms of energy, Tyranny had the upper hand. Li Yibo had just been slapped in the face. His mood wasn't good, and he didn't want to speak anymore. The majority of people in the stadium were Happy fans. They had been worried seeing that scene. They couldn't understand why no one in Happy did anything to help. What was Happy's plan? No instructions had been typed into Happy's team chat, which meant that everything so far had been a part of Happy's pre-match plans. Their strategy seemed to be to lure the opponents deep into their territory, but seeing Tyranny now, they definitely weren't going to fall into that sort of trap. Even so, Happy was insistent on following with their plans. What are they doing? Even Huang Xiaoshan couldn't understand. He messaged Yu Wenzhou. Maybe they wanted to have a better feel for Tyranny's tactical structure. Yu Wenzhou wasn't certain either. In that case, did they need to do that? If they didn't do it that way, who else besides Ye Xiu could escape from that sort of predicament? Yu Wenzhou replied. Huang Xiaoshan held his cell phone in his hands for a long time, but he didn't reply. Everyone would always ask this question to themselves subconsciously. Escape from the 100 Blossom style the way Ye Xiu did. Extremely difficult. Huang Xiaoshan had a certain level of understanding of the 100 Blossom style, but not to the same level of depth as Ye Xiu. Troubling Rain didn't have a shield either, so it would be much harder for him to block attacks. Break through the 100 Blossom style while silenced, only by dodging and blocking. Extremely difficult was one way to put it, but that was because there was no such thing as impossible. If he had been in Ye Xiu's position, he would most likely have died. Chapter 1505. Waiting at the ambush area. Chapter 1505. Waiting at the ambush area. Translator. Namyami editor. Namyami was Ye Xiu trying to get a feel for the new tyranny. After the discussion with Yu Wenzhou, Huang Shaoshan began observing Lord Grimm more closely. Tyranny did not react in the slightest towards his provocation, playing extremely patiently. As a result, Ye Xiu had also slowed down. Retreat. Lord Grimm retreated. The pace of his retreat just happened to match the pace of tyranny's advance. Not everyone could see this point, or at least when Pan Lin and Li Yibo talked about this topic, they simply said that Ye Xiu was starting to become more cautious. Yes, he was being cautious, but for what reason? To continue getting a feel for tyranny. He had been getting a feel for their offense. Now he was getting a feel for their defense. He's getting a feel for tyranny's tempo switch. This time, Yu Wenzhou messaged Huang Shaoshan, tempo switch. Normal players might only have an idea of what it was, but pro players would immediately understand if they heard this phrase. To put it simply, it was referring to the switch in tempo between attack and defense. It couldn't be too flat or too exaggerated. It had to be just right. Ye Xiu was constantly adjusting his own tempo to produce a change in tyranny's tempo. From this, he could grasp new information on tyranny. This isn't to win the match, but to win the set. Yu Wenzhou typed again. Huang Shaoshan understood this point. Tyranny had constantly been rotating their roster throughout the regular season. It was only until the end of the season did the old generals of tyranny start coming out together. However, everyone knew that those games were just as a warm-up. Their full capabilities would only be revealed in the playoffs. How had tyranny changed over the course of this season? The only way to find out was to personally experience it, which was why Ye Xiu didn't hesitate to take these risks alone. In terms of tactics, it was very risky, but from a strategic standpoint, it would likely prove to be useful in the future. But would tyranny let Ye Xiu see everything so easily? The two gunners in tyranny suddenly rushed out again. Bang, bang, bang. The gunfire crisscrossed towards Lord Grimm. This time, Ye Xiu was ready. As soon as he saw the two dash out, he swiftly retreated. The broadcast rotated through the four players on Happy lying in wait. Happy's ambush area was not far now. Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm was retreating towards this area. Would tyranny walk into the ambush? No. The two gunners forced Lord Grimm to retreat to show that he was not welcome. Tyranny had no intentions of relentlessly pursuing him. As a result, when Lord Grimm retreated into the ambush area, tyranny was still a fair distance away. Han Wenqing and Lin Jingyan didn't move forward. Only Zhang Jiao and Qin Mayan, the two long-ranged characters, attacked from afar. The team didn't enter into the ambush, instead using their long range to harass Lord Grimm. Even though Lord Grimm had long-ranged attacks too, how could he compare to two genuine gunners? There was no way he could compete with them. He could only continue retreating. Team Tyranny was unexpectedly using long-ranged classes to open their path forward, while the melee classes stayed at the back to provide support. Even so, this unconventional formation worked perfectly in this situation. Even if the long-ranged characters fell for an ambush, they wouldn't be as deep into it as the melee characters. Lord Grimm had retreated deep into the ambush. The houses in the residential area were established on verdant and lush trees. Many of the houses on the trees were covered by leaves and were well hidden. With one glance, it was obvious that this place was perfect for setting up ambushes. After Zhang Xinji gave a warning in the chat, even Zhang Jiao and Qin Mayan stopped chasing after Lord Grimm. "You're not going to heal?" Zhang Jiao asked Ye Xiu in the public chat. "Not rush," Ye Xiu replied. Don't look at how he had never directly engaged in a prolonged fight with tyranny. He had lost a considerable amount of health during his retreat. He only had 47% of his health left, not even half. He was half dead, yet tyranny still didn't push forward to kill him. Their patience and perseverance were terrifying. Zhang Xinji's immovable rock moved to the front. He looked around. Just like this, he stood outside of Happy's ambush range and calmly observed his surroundings. Happy's overreaching themselves, Pan Lin said. Even if this was a team competition map, it wasn't so large that it couldn't be explored. If tyranny continued to slowly take in their surroundings, they would quickly see what areas to look out for. The person making the observations was the master tactician, Zhang Xinji, the Zhang Xinji who never let out an opening and never missed details. Immovable Rock suddenly raised his hands, pointing towards a direction. Dazzling 100 Blossoms raised his arms and tossed a grenade in that direction. Boom! The grenade flew in a beautiful arc, but halfway through the grenade suddenly exploded. Fire rained down. Dazzling 100 Blossoms had tossed a burst grenade. Haha, sorry, Ye Xiu apologized in the public chat. On the other end of the forest, smoke rose from the tip of Lord Grimm's umbrella. He had shot down the grenade. Suddenly, Lin Jingyan raised his arm. What appeared to be a wine bottle flew in that direction. Are you testing me? Ye Xiu even had the time to type out a message. Lord Grimm lifted his umbrella, and with a bang, the wine bottle shattered into pieces. Flames rained down and spread onto the ground. Are you trying to set the forest on fire? That's a bit difficult, Ye Xiu typed. The broadcast coordinated with the conversation between the players. As Ye Xiu said these words, the camera zoomed in on the fire on the ground. Sure enough, the fire produced by these skills didn't last for long before dissipating. A better idea would be to learn from Huang Xiaoshan and cut down these trees instead, Ye Xiu suggested. That motherfucker! Huang Xiaoshan was just watching the match, and shots were being fired at him. He quickly expressed his inner resentment in the form of a message for Yu Wenzhou. Tyranny remained indifferent towards Ye Xiu's words. Not a single person in the team replied back. Zhang Xinji's immovable rock continued to observe his surroundings. While communicating the information he got into Tyranny's team chat. Ye Xiu didn't know, but the viewers could see it. Not only did the viewers know what Tyranny was discussing, they even knew where the other 4 members of Happy were hiding. Tyranny was discussing where the other members of Happy were likely hiding at. Usually, they would analyze it based off their classes to see what locations would be most advantageous for them. The likely hiding spots of Happy's 4 characters were being deduced. The viewers checked, all correct. Happy's current hiding spots were within Tyranny's analysis. From there, they took the analysis a step further and eliminated the less probable hiding spots. They did this step by looking at the habits and styles of each player. The player's style would also decide what type of position best suited them. After eliminating half of the possibilities, the viewers checked again, all correct. Terrifying. Too terrifying. The stadium was completely silent. Let alone fighting, there was almost no movement whatsoever. 4 little squares were sectioned off on the screen, showing each of Happy's 4 characters. Whenever Tyranny mentioned the location of these Happy members, the camera would immediately zoom in on the square. The broadcast seemed to be coordinating with Tyranny's team chat, drawing a diagram for the viewers to see. However, by doing this, the viewers felt an even stronger sense of chilliness. Tyranny's strong logic had unraveled Happy's ambush. After filtering out the hiding spots by player style and class, they filtered it even further by their offensive and defensive coordination, formation, etc. In the end, they concluded 6 possibilities for the 4 hiding spots. They couldn't be certain about the 2 extra, but this was already incredible because Happy's true hiding spots were all within these 6 possibilities. As Tyranny narrowed down the search, the audience members in the away team seats were clapping wildly. Every time the analysis was spot on, the applause would reach a new high. As for Happy's fans, they were dead silent. Happy's opponent stood right in front of them, unraveling Happy's plans bit by bit, yet not a single sign of movement could be seen coming from Happy. Was this a contest of patience? But the other side isn't competing with you in terms of patience. You guys are waiting patiently, but the other side has already completely seen through everything. If the ambush was seen through, then it was no longer an ambush. Tyranny quickly formulated an attack plan based off of their deductions. Bang, 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 the sounds of gunfire. The two gunners led the attack. They ignored Lord Grimm, who was directly facing them. Instead, they aimed at trees that appeared to have no one there. Dancing rain. Tyranny just happened to attack where dancing rain was. They didn't attack the important healer, nor the average skilled rookie Luo Jai, who was coming out onto the playoff stage for the first time. Tyranny's first target was the experienced Su Ma Cheng, the launcher who held the range advantage. It seemed to be a stupid choice, but the viewers understood the reason clearly, because they had seen the analysis by Tyranny. There was only one reason for picking Dancing Rain as their first target. Dancing Rain's position was the position that they were most certain of. Reliable and never making mistakes, the style of Zhang Xinji. Chapter 1506, The Possibility of Mistake. Chapter 1506, The Possibility of Mistake. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. The dusky forest brightened, illuminating a path from Tyranny's formation. Zhang Jiao, dazzling 100 blossoms. 100 blossoms style, offense and defense together. By the time the viewers regained their composure, desert dust and dark thunder had vanished. Only their shadows could be seen flickering in the light. The two had charged forward alongside dazzling 100 blossoms attacks. Tyranny's fans instantly became excited. Holy Trinity, the Tyranny fans cheered. Holy Trinity. Han Wenqing, Zhang Jiao, and Lin Jingyan. These three old generals of Tyranny had been fighting each other all the way from Season 2 to Season 9. At the end of their careers, the three unexpectedly became teammates, gathering together under Tyranny. They were even able to create their own unique offensive formation, which Tyranny nicknamed the Holy Trinity. The name showed just how much synergy there was between them. The people who understood you the best were your own enemies. These words suited these three perfectly. From enemies to teammates, being able to create their own set of tactics so quickly was because of their many years of experience as opponents. At this moment, Tyranny officially began their offensive. The Holy Trinity that had the Tyranny fans go wild last season had reappeared. As for this season, because of their frequent rotations, the three old generals rarely appeared together on stage. The Tyranny fans had been waiting to see this scene for too long. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Their hopes had finally been realized. The Holy Trinity didn't seem to be out of practice at all. Just as the fans were getting excited, another shadow flickered into their view. -9 degrees, Qin Mayan. Tyranny's fifth player, the fifth player who was overshadowed by the gods around him, had intruded into this picturesque scene. He didn't match the pace of the other three. His pace seemed completely out of place in comparison. However, the true experts could immediately feel the improvement in Team Tyranny as a whole. The Holy Trinity, it still comprised of the same three players. However, there was now a new helper alongside them. Qin Mayan was outstanding at positioning. He kept weaving in and out between the Holy Trinity, his gaze and gun aimed at spots that could potentially mean trouble for the formation. It was just that no trouble had occurred yet, so -9 degrees looked somewhat comical, as if he were delusional. But this was Zhang Xinji's style. It was better to be safe than sorry. His every move blocked any potential areas that could disrupt their plans. Shortly afterwards, the Holy Trinity had reached their destination. Cannon fire could already be heard in the forest. Tyranny's guess had been correct. Suma Cheng obviously wasn't going to sit there and wait for her death to come. Dancing Rain fired a few shots at the light cover, borrowing the recoil to move. Aerial cannon. It was difficult to change directions while using aerial cannon, so it wasn't too suitable for this map. However, with this being Happy's home map, Suma Cheng was evidently very familiar with this area of the map. As Dancing Rain used aerial cannon, she accurately calculated the glide distance and direction every time, intentionally bumping into trees to change directions. After a few shots, Dancing Rain pulled away from Tyranny's formation. Bang, 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 bang. Gunshots suddenly rang in the air. Chin Mayun's -9 degrees suddenly fired towards a direction. Enemy attack. No, the slower viewers weren't sure what was happening. On the other hand, the more attentive viewers quickly realized that Chin Mayun's -9 degrees was firing at one of the 6 potential hiding spots that Tyranny had conjectured. There's no one there. The viewers could see where Happy's members were located and knew the answer. Even so, by checking with his attacks, he helped Tyranny eliminate this possibility. As a result, apart from the already exposed Dancing Rain, there were only 4 guesses and 3 characters left. Tyranny was in no hurry, though. Tyranny had already reached this far in. Was Happy still going to do nothing? If they made some adjustments, they might make Tyranny to predict wrongly. Thus, Tyranny didn't make any rash movements and focused on Dancing Rain. Dazzling 100 Blossoms offensive kept her under control. The bright lights kept interfering with Dancing Rain's sight, making it difficult for her to see Tyranny's pathing. Han Wenqing and Lin Jingyan quickly closed in under this light cover. Be careful of Ye Xiu. Zhang Xinji reminded everyone. Ye Xiu moved. He saw that Suma Cheng's situation wasn't looking too good. Lord Grimm went over to provide support. Bang, 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 another round of gunfire. It was Chin Mayun's job to stop Ye Xiu from helping her out. He didn't need Zhang Xinji's warning. He had taken note of Ye Xiu. As soon as he saw Lord Grimm move, he didn't hesitate to attack. Lord Grimm fled behind a tree. Under such heavy gunfire, he couldn't easily expose himself. He could use his shield to tank the hits, but Lord Grimm didn't have that much health right now. His shield only reduced the damage too. It didn't negate it. Beautiful, Zhang Jiao praised in the chat as Dazzling 100 Blossoms attacked even more fiercely. Zhang Xinji wasn't moved by the current situation. He continued to be cautious, paying close attention to those calm areas. It was too calm. The battle had already developed to this stage, yet Happy still wasn't going to act. Were they really going to test Ye Xiu and Suma Cheng and hope for the two to escape on their own? If Ye Xiu and Suma Cheng failed to escape and died here, the match would be over. Could I have missed something? Zhang Xinji never made mistakes. That was what people thought of Zhang Xinji, but Zhang Xinji himself never felt like he never made mistakes. He simply did his best to think of all aspects before making a decision. Others might not see any mistakes, but that was because he was constantly thinking of what could go wrong. He never let down his guard at any moment. He always thought of what could go wrong at any moment. The calmness from Happy gave him that sort of feeling. Zhang Xinji wasn't someone who made decisions based purely off of intuition. This feeling was based on logic. If Happy didn't make any changes, they would certainly lose, so it didn't make sense that Happy would make no changes. Where? Zhang Xinji made sure to keep up with the team's tempo while continuing to observe his surroundings. Over there. Just when Zhang Xinji turned to look over there, he immediately turned back and had immovable rock perform a roll. There was no sound, no light, but did that mean nothing had happened? The moment immovable rock left that spot, the branches and leaves on the ground were suddenly swept up by the wind. Cloud grasping fist. The Qi Master's cloud grasping fist. Happy's Fang Rui, the master of playing dirty, had begun his own individual operation as soon as Tyranny entered their ambush area. He was very patient. Even when Tyranny had nearly cornered Suma Cheng, even when Ye Xiu had been prevented from helping her, he hadn't made his move, because what he wanted wasn't just to give tyranny a bit of an inconvenience. He wanted to completely disrupt the entire tyranny with a single move. He had fixed his sights on Zhang Xinji, on the important healer. He had been waiting for an opportunity to act. From the very beginning, he had planned on stealthily grabbing Zhang Xinji's immovable rock with a cloud-grasping fist. That was why he ignored Sima Cheng's and Ye Xiu's predicament. Only those sorts of predicaments could catch tyranny's attention and lower their guard towards their healer. These types of ambushes were Fang Rui's specialty. His judgment was correct. When Qin Mayan began targeting Ye Xiu to stop him from helping Sima Cheng, tyranny's attention was almost entirely fixed on the fight over there. As a result, Fang Rui made his move. Following immovable rock, Boundless Sea found a perfect position. Then he casted, prayed for good luck, and acted. However, in the final moments, Fang Rui hadn't expected Zhang Xinji to sense it. The cloud-grasping fist missed, exposing his position. Even though he was facing a cleric who posed no offensive threat, Fang Rui felt like he had been stripped naked. It was as if nothing could escape from Zhang Xinji's notice. "Fine, if an ambush isn't going to work, then I'll just go to you." Boundless Sea unexpectedly rushed forward. The cloud-grasping fist had missed, so his new plan was to kidnap immovable rock directly. Zhang Xinji immediately had immovable rock retreat. Tyranny's other players obviously received the signal. In an instant, the 100-blossom style enveloped immovable rock. Then the light and immovable rock vanished. "What, is this a magic trick? Are you sure you aren't a magician?" Fang Rui spat out. He immediately changed his plans. He couldn't catch immovable rock, so he began attacking Qin Mayan's -9 degrees. The guy had firepower, though. Fang Rui couldn't fight him out in the open, so he relied on his familiarity with the terrain to begin playing dirty. Chi bullet. Boundless Sea suddenly reached out with his hands and fired a chi bullet from behind a tree. Qin Mayan didn't dodge and let the chi bullet hit -9 degrees. He was ready to guard against a follow-up from behind that tree when a storm of chi came from the other direction. Sky-piercing cannon. The wave of chi sent branches and leaves flying. It was obvious where it was coming from. The attack seemed to be saying to him, "You little punk, let's see you tank this one." Chapter 1507. Neither side willing to take a step. Chapter 1507. Neither side willing to take a step. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami Sky-piercing cannon. You could ignore the damage dealt by the skill, but you could not ignore its knockback. If you tanked the skill without super armor, you would certainly be sent flying. Qin Mayan had -9 degrees dodge and counterattack simultaneously. But when he glanced behind him, his heart tightened. He had dodged sky-piercing cannon, but the surging chi was now heading towards one of his allies. Dazzling 100 blossoms. Zhang Jiao's dazzling 100 blossoms. Sure enough, Fang Rui's harassment was shameless and dirty. If the attack onto -9 degrees missed, there was a fallback. It was very clear why he picked those two targets too. If he hit -9 degrees, he would reduce the pressure on Ye Xiu. Hitting dazzling 100 blossoms would be even better. The 100 blossom style was a hindrance towards both Ye Xiu and Sima Cheng. Qin Mayan didn't know whether Zhang Jiao noticed it or not and quickly warned him. He didn't have time to type any words. Zhang Jiao hadn't noticed it, but Qin Mayan's warning was prompt enough. Not just Zhang Jiao, but Han Wenqing and Lin Jingyan dodged as soon as they saw the warning. Dazzling 100 blossoms flopped like a fish and rolled, dodging the sky-piercing cannon. Qin Mayan let out a sigh of relief. However, Fang Rui's Boundless Sea had disappeared. He didn't know where he would come out from next time. Qin Mayan started feeling nervous. This was his responsibility, but Fang Rui's dirtiness was difficult for him to deal with. It took a long time for talents to grow. Compared to other rookies, he was more mature and rational. From the day he became part of Tyranny's main roster, he knew that he would not be the lead role on stage. At that time, Team Tyranny had shined the brightest in all of glory. Legendary names that would go down in glory history had gathered together in this team. Qin Mayan became the fifth player alongside them. Other rookies might feel pressured under these circumstances, but Qin Mayan did not. He figured out his own role in the team. In this group filled with stars, he didn't need to shine any brighter. Perhaps being put out of the spotlight would allow him to bring out more of his potential. As a result, Qin Mayan began his career as an invisible existence. For the rookies of this day and age, perhaps none of them would be happy about such a situation. They wanted to hurry and show everyone their talent so that everyone would recognize their worth. Qin Mayan was different. Just like this, he finished an entire season in the dark. His numbers weren't spectacular, and he never made any highlight plays in the regular season. However, he was still a part of the main roster. No matter how invisible he may seem, Qin Mayan was confident in his own contributions to the team. His own value would not be neglected. Team Tyranny had Zhang Xinji, who would never overlook anything. With this vice-captain, Qin Mayan could safely compete with his own style. He didn't need to worry about whether the team would forget about him. Qin Mayan succeeded. Even if he hadn't received any attention for a long time, as part of the main roster for a season, just that fact alone was enough for people to no longer ignore him. Qin Mayan continued to hide under the radiance of the gods around him, but his existence was no longer ignored. As a result, his playstyle was no longer as suitable this season because their opponents were taking note of him. A player with a steady position in Tyranny's main roster could not be neglected. The space that he had due to being ignored was gone. Qin Mayan had no choice but to adapt to the new circumstances. He could no longer hide. He needed to use his own abilities to make the gods shine even brighter. His role was to patch up the gaps in the Holy Trinity. But facing Fang Rui, Qin Mayan was worried whether he would be able to complete this task. This master of playing dirty was too crafty. Although Lin Jingyan, who's used to be old partners with Fang Rui, had told him much of Fang Rui's methods and habits, his class change made it difficult to rely on just these to keep up with Fang Rui. Tyranny's heroes were incompatible with his dirtiness. They couldn't keep up with Fang Rui's thoughts. Where is he? -9 degrees kept looking. He had outstanding positioning and was good at finding potential trouble spots, but after his misplaced judgment of Fang Rui's previous move, his confidence was starting to falter. "Don't panic," Zhang Xinji's message popped out in the chat. He could tell that Qin Mayan was nervous. Tyranny mainly consisted of experienced veterans. However, their one inexperienced player's spirit had been disrupted by Fang Rui's sneak attack. "I'm coming," another person typed. Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder ran towards that area. The Holy Trinity formation had been temporarily disbanded. Han Wenqing and Zhang Jiao were enough to pressure Sima Cheng. When he saw that Qin Mayan was having trouble dealing with Ye Xiu and Fang Rui, he chose to stop what he was doing and help him. Fang Rui was undoubtedly a target that he was familiar with. Dark Thunder turned towards a certain direction. Sure enough, Boundless Sea was in that direction. Fang Rui was helpless. His old partner knew him too well. Boundless Sea suppressed the rising qi that he had gathered and examined the situation again. Fang Rui was observing the situation. It was the same for Zhang Xinji. 3 of Happy's players were visible. Sima Cheng had been isolated. Ye Xiu was trying to re-establish contact with her, while Fang Rui was trying to disrupt Tyranny's tempo. There was no tactical coordination between any of them. Sima Cheng, Ye Xiu, and Fang Rui were doing their own thing. This clearly wasn't the purpose for setting up an ambush. Had the ambush already been resolved? In that case, what about Luo Jai and Wenyi? Zhang Xinji didn't neglect the potential hiding spots that they had ascertained, but there were no movements from there. The battle on this end had fully developed. There was no extra manpower to check those spots. Should we continue with our offensive? Zhang Xinji's immovable rock had shifted towards this end. No large changes had occurred yet. However, Ye Xiu's and Sima Cheng's abilities weren't just this. With Lin Jingyan shifting his attention to Fang Rui, the pressure onto them should have been greatly reduced. The deadlock should have been broken. It was true that Lin Jingyan was an effective answer for Fang Rui, but at the same time, Zhang Xinji took another look at Happy. Happy still had two players who had not yet showed their faces, so the hidden dangers had not been completely eliminated. Fang Rui's harassment gave Happy some space. He wanted to use this time to observe Happy's movements and hopefully reveal all of Happy's cards. With support from Dazzling 100 Blossoms, Han Wenking's Desert Dust was getting closer and closer to Dancing Rain. Even though he hadn't launched any attacks yet, his push forward was far more threatening to Sima Cheng than Zhang Giles' attacks. If Han Wenking's Desert Dust was able to get close to her, the only outcome for her launcher was death. Retreat, keep retreating. Sima Cheng didn't seem to have found a way to escape. She could only keep on retreating and maintaining a distance between them. As she retreated, Han Wenking and Zhang Jiao advanced. Zhang Xinji's immovable rock also had to follow his team. The entirety of Tyranny was being pulled deeper into the residential area. The players could already see numerous tree houses on top of the trees. They weren't just following Dancing Rain blindly. The team maintained their formation. As Dancing Rain retreated deeper into the area, they had tried to surround Ye Xiu's Lord Grim. But in the end, Ye Xiu was able to see through their intentions. Tyranny's formation was still intact though. Ye Xiu's Lord Grim failed to reach Dancing Rain, but his presence made it such that Tyranny could not let out any openings. Lin Jingyan and Fang Rui were following along with the paces of their respective teams, keeping their opponent in check and moving. The atmosphere in the stadium was very strange. The two sides could take a step and change the situation, but neither of them did so. In the end, Tyranny didn't open up their offensive, while Happy didn't do everything they could to save Sima Cheng. Both sides seemed to be using 70% of their strength. The remaining 30% made the viewers feel extremely anxious. The match is still in the observation stage. Yu Wenzhou messaged Huang Xiaoshan. Previously, he had felt that Ye Xiu wanted to get a feel for Tyranny for the sake of the set win. But now, from the looks of it, Tyranny's Zhang Xinji also wanted to get a solid grasp on Happy before making his move. What is Happy planning? Yu Wenzhou was also puzzled. Unfortunately, even having an omniscient view of the battle didn't help. The commentators could not see the problem either. Who would be the first to break the balance? This was the crucial question. Both sides wanted to react to their opponent's actions. It depended on who would be more patient. However, from the current situation, even if Happy wanted to be patient, the situation might not let them. This was the terrifying part about Zhang Xinji. His tactics were never dirty. He used oppressive strength to pressure the opponent to force the opponents into doing what he wanted. This tactical style had grown relying on Tyranny's powerful offensive capabilities. Is Happy not able to think of a solution? Pan Lin cried out. For the people who weren't able to see deep enough, Happy was at a disadvantage. Tyranny was forcing them back step by step. If Happy could not find a way to break through the situation, they would be forced into action. Come, show me your cards. Happy's plan couldn't just be an ambush, right? Why bring a summoner in this map? Zhang Xinji was looking forward to what awaited him. Chapter 1508, Instant after Instant. Chapter 1508, Instant after Instant. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami. It was Luo Jai's first time on the playoff stage. He was a rookie that couldn't be more of a rookie. If he knew that Zhang Xinji was worried about him, his self-confidence would skyrocket. But no matter how much Zhang Xinji was looking forward to what was to come from him, Luo Jai wasn't going to give him face. His summoner, Concealed Light, had yet to appear on the battlefield. The viewers didn't know that Zhang Xinji was thinking about Luo Jai. If not, the broadcast would have certainly given concealed light a few close-ups to see what he was so busy with that he couldn't give this vice captain any face. Luo Jai's concealed light didn't make any movements, but Ye Xiu's Lord Grim did. Boom! A grenade exploded. Lord Grim tore through the explosion and rushed towards Dancing Rain. In the end, Sima Cheng isn't able to hold on and needs to be rescued. Zhang Xinji's attention quickly shifted towards that direction. As a cleric, his job wasn't just to keep up his team's health. Clerics had many useful offensive support skills such as Sacred Fire, Hypnosis, Holy Commandment. This was the difference between clerics and paladins. Clerics served a more offensive role, while paladins served a more defensive role. When Ye Xiu's Lord Grim rushed forward, the first person to intercept him on Tiany's side was Zhang Xinji's immovable rock. Immovable rock lifted his silver weapon, backlight cross, to his forehead and began casting a spell. Sacred Fire. Sacred Fire was a widely used cleric skill. No one cared about the damage dealt by the skill. What mattered was the 3 seconds of silence. 3 seconds. Ye Xiu would likely reach Sima Cheng within these 3 seconds, but if he couldn't use any skills, how was he supposed to rescue her? Happy's fans began to feel worried for Ye Xiu, seeing what Immovable Rock was about to do. Immovable Rock's cast speed was extremely fast. The Sacred Fire was practically cast in an instant. White light radiated from the backlight cross. Then, the light seemed to leap across the void and disappeared. On the other side of the forest, a Sacred Fire suddenly burst forth in front of Lord Grim. It missed. Right when Lord Grim was about to take a step, he suddenly stopped, the Sacred Fire floating in front of him. Then he gently circled around it and even took a glance at Immovable Rock. Was I discovered? Zhang Xinji felt that it was a pity, but he wasn't frustrated by it. Ambushes weren't his specialty. What's more, he was trying to ambush someone as experienced as Ye Xiu. Zhang Xinji never placed all of his hopes on a single skill. The Sacred Fire missed. It was too bad, but it at least disrupted Lord Grim's tempo. Dazzling 100 Blossoms seized this opportunity to attack Lord Grim. As for Han Wenking's Desert Dust, he stepped to the side, stopping Sima Cheng's attempt to move her Dancing Rain towards Lord Grim. A launcher charging past a striker was not a good idea. The blossoming light swallowed Lord Grim. Suddenly, the forest seemed to quiet down. What was missing? -9 degrees gunshots. Qin Mayan's -9 degrees had been chasing after Lord Grim, but the blossoming light blocked his view. For a moment, he couldn't lock onto his target. Not good. The sudden pause made Zhang Xinji realize that the situation wasn't good. It had interrupted Tyranny's tempo. Ye Xiu had most likely intentionally let his Lord Grim get swallowed by the blossoming light. He had unexpectedly used his opponent's offensive as a cover. It was unadorned disdain towards Zhang Jiao. Zhang Xinji realized it, as did Zhang Jiao. The blossoming light that he had sent over wasn't a net, but a wall. If Ye Xiu continued to charge towards Dancing Rain, he would certainly suffer heavy damage. With Han Wenking's Desert Dust there, as well as a pincer from Zhang Jiao and Qin Mayan, they could eliminate him in one go. That was the best outcome, but Zhang Jiao didn't think Ye Xiu was so stupid. But it turned out that Lord Grim really did walk right into it. In that instant, Zhang Jiao had been excited, but he soon realized that though Ye Xiu's intrusion had been shallow, Lord Grim had walked into his 100 Blossom style, but he didn't continue moving through the wall. He's using me as cover. Zhang Jiao and Zhang Xinji reacted almost simultaneously. Zhang Jiao had dazzling 100 Blossoms hastily retract the light cover. Not good. Not good at all. Zhang Jiao had realized the problem, but his realization had been somewhat shallow. When he retracted the light cover, Zhang Xinji immediately noticed an even deeper problem. By borrowing the light as a cover, Ye Xiu had interrupted Qin Mayan's offensive and tyranny's tempo. Then, when Zhang Jiao noticed the problem, he adjusted his 100 Blossom style. Didn't that mean he had interrupted tyranny's tempo twice? The interruptions had come one after the other. Although it was just for an instant, Qin Mayan and Zhang Jiao had stopped their attacks. Ye Xiu had been looking for this instant. Boom, 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 the sounds of cannon fire. Sure enough, Suma Cheng's dancing rain immediately seized this opening. She paved the way forward with her cannon fire. At the same time, Ye Xiu's Lord Grim charged fiercely at Han Wenking's Desert Dust. Having won the title of best partners for 3 consecutive years, the coordination between the two didn't need to be explained. There was only one final obstacle in their path: Han Wenking. Team Tyranny's captain, Han Wenking. Reinforced iron bones. No one knew if Han Wenking had a complete grasp of the situation like Zhang Xinji did, but when he saw Suma Cheng and Ye Xiu form a pincer onto him, he immediately had Desert Dust activate reinforced iron bones. Then he completely ignored Lord Grim. Ferocious Tiger Flurry. Desert Dust attacked Dancing Rain, ignoring Lord Grim's attacks from behind. With reinforced iron bones activated, these attacks would not hinder his movements. Right now, he only had one target in his sights, Dancing Rain, who was heading straight towards him. Boom, boom, boom. Dancing Rain's artillery shells exploded onto Desert Dust, but it didn't even faze him. At this moment, everyone experienced the ferocity of a tiger that had rampaged through the battlefield for 10 years. The wind from his fists whistled by. Suma Cheng clearly hadn't expected Han Wenking to do this. It was too late for Dancing Rain to retreat. She could only do her best and face the ferocious Tiger Flurry head-on. Dodge. Not possible. She could only try to minimize the damage that she took. A white light radiated from Desert Dust, who could ignore most attacks with reinforced iron bones. The reason that he could bravely charge forward even if he didn't have a grasp of the situation was because he trusted the person behind him. With him, not a drop of water would leak out. Anything he overlooked would be patched up. Opportunity was only for an instant. Ye Xiu had cleverly interrupted Qin Mayan's and Zhang Jiao's offensive, but in the end, he had been stopped by Han Wenking. Opportunity was fleeting. -9 degrees and dazzling 100 Blossoms started their offensive again. The two characters had rushed over to surround them. Not only had Ye Xiu failed to rescue Suma Cheng, it looked like he was going to be trapped here too. Good, it was just a false alarm. Even Zhang Xinji couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. But then in that instant a white light suddenly flashed from the depths of the forest. White light. A white light that Zhang Xinji couldn't be more familiar with. Kai. It was a gentle noise, but in that instant Desert Dust became enshrouded in white flames. Reinforced iron bones, so what? Ferocious Tiger Flurry, so what? Sacred Fire. The cleric's Sacred Fire. The skill that Han Wenking's most reliable partner was proficient at was now burning Han Wenking's Desert Dust. Ferocious Tiger Flurry was interrupted, and the reinforced iron bones was dispelled. Lord Grim stepped forward, falling flower palm. Boom! Desert Dust was sent flying. Lord Grim and Dancing Rain had finally convened. -9 degrees and dazzling 100 Blossoms were still firing at them. But the problem with long-ranged classes were that their control over the battle wasn't enough. Trying to keep Ye Xiu and Suma Cheng there with just the two of them was too difficult, let alone when one of them had a giant shield. Happy's and Wenyi, a rookie cleric and a fan of Zhang Xinji, used what Zhang Xinji was most proficient at to help rescue Happy from a crisis. A pity. Zhang Xinji could only say that it was a pity. He rarely made mistakes because he faced his mistakes. He wouldn't get frustrated by his mistakes. It only made him work harder. Fights were always back and forth. Zhang Xinji knew that it was not possible to have a 100% grasp in any situation. Ye Xiu successfully convened with Sima Cheng, but the match was far from over. Who knew how many more back and forths there would be? The two had convened, but they hadn't escaped, no. The gunfire from the two gunners continued to weave in and out. Desert Dust, who had been sent flying by a falling flower palm, was on his way back. Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder was actively drawing closer to the team, while being on the lookout for Fang Rui. Ye Xiu and Sima Cheng had broken through the small net, but a bigger net was coming their way. And Wenyi's little cold hands position was now known. Another sneaky move like that sacred fire wouldn't be so easy. Chapter 1509, Falling Short. Chapter 1509, Falling Short. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami. It had only been a short moment, yet all sorts of changes had taken place. The lesser skilled players might not even have been able to recognize what twists and turns had happened. With help from the sacred fire from Wenyi's little cold hands, Ye Xiu's Lord Grim and Sima Cheng's dancing rain were finally able to convene. It wasn't over yet, though. The two had established contact with each other, but it was far too early to say that they had escaped from tyranny. By this time, Desert Dust had recovered from the sacred fire. Again, he took the shortest path and ran towards the two at his fastest speed. In the meantime, the two tyranny gunners weren't stingy with their ammunition. Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder was also moving towards the front to stop the two from leaving. The situation looked to be advantageous for tyranny, but this time, Zhang Xinji didn't dare let out a sigh of relief. Little Cold Hand's save with the sacred fire had happened once, and it could happen again. However, this time, Little Cold Hands was being watched with great attention, making hard for him to even find an opening to cast a heal. Under Zhang Xinji's instructions, the two gunners were keeping an eye on him. Happy had others, though. Fang Rui. Even if Lin Jingyan, who understood him inside and out, was on the lookout for him, it wasn't enough to make them feel at ease. There was also Luo Jai's summoner, Concealed Light, who had yet to appear. What is Concealed Light doing? Finally, it wasn't just Zhang Xinji who was wondering. Pan Lin and Li Yibo had started to talk about this question as well. The broadcast also found an opportunity to switch to Luo Jai's perspective. Concealed Light was moving. That was all the information they could get from this angle. For a moment, it was impossible to tell what he was planning. The broadcast could not put the focus on him entirely. After all, there was an intense battle taking place on the other side. Moreover, Luo Jai was a rookie at his first playoffs game. In reality, more people were worried rather than expectant of him. In the end, the broadcast left a small window for Concealed Light, but not long afterwards, the scene in the small window changed. Boundless Sea. Fang Rui's Boundless Sea was put into the small window instead. The broadcast figured that Fang Rui's actions were more likely to become a turning point for Happy. Boundless Sea lowered his body, hiding amongst the underbrush as he moved. He moved slowly but resolutely. His line of sight was fixed ahead of him. He evidently had a clear plan in mind. The camera focused on where Boundless Sea was looking at, Lord Grim and Dancing Rain. Tyranny's two gunners were controlling these two's movements brilliantly. Zhang Giles' 100 Blossom style interfered with their vision, while Qin Mayan relied on his outstanding positioning skills to predict and seal off their most optimal retreat paths. The two attacked at a wide angle and moved accordingly. As a result, even though Lord Grim had a shield, he was unable to defend against simultaneous attacks from two sides. Healer, be careful. Ye Xiu's own situation was worrying, but he couldn't help but warn Wenyi. Zhang Giles' dazzling 100 Blossoms formed a wide angle with Qin Mayan's -9 degrees, while pushing closer to Little Cold Hands. He was no longer simply keeping watch onto him, but preparing to attack him. Although Wenyi lacked experience, he never lost his cool or his ability to reason. He had been taking note of Zhang Giles' movements even before Ye Xiu gave a warning. But at this moment, even though Ye Xiu had pointed it out, he still didn't move. What is he doing? Many Happy's fans were becoming dissatisfied. Even though Nwenyi had just performed a miraculous save, as a player who had always been deemed as Happy's weak point, there were still many players who took particular note of him, worried that he would make a careless mistake on the stage. Ye Xiu had just warned him despite being in such a predicament, yet he still wasn't going to move. What is Nwenyi doing? Is he so focused that he can't see the Tam chat? That shouldn't be right. Could he be too nervous? The more Pan Lin talked, the more he felt that he was wrong. Nervous. Did Happy's rookies ever feel nervous? Tang Ru, Bao Rongxing, Mo Fan, and Wenyi, all of them were first-year rookies. There were times where their unfamiliarity with professional play hindered them, but nervousness. Sometimes it seemed like Happy's rookies were tougher than even many experienced pro players. And Wenyi wasn't nervous, so why did he ignore Ye Xiu's warning? Does he have other thoughts? Li Yibo spoke up. Happy's rookies couldn't be viewed from common knowledge. Rookies from other teams wouldn't hesitate to follow what their captain or senior instructed, but it was different for the players on Happy, who didn't seem to know what nervous meant. Having their own thoughts and ideas during a match shouldn't be anything strange, no. More importantly, Ye Xiu's message wasn't an order but a warning. How Nwenyi would respond depended on himself. The camera switched over to Nwenyi's little cold hands. Zhang Jile's dazzling 100 blossoms was speeding up. The others on Tyranny had noticed this new target and started towards that direction as well. All of them were experienced seniors who had gone through hundreds of battles. This sort of tacit understanding between them was easy. They didn't need anyone to remind them. After retaining this possibility, they just needed to confirm which target would be more advantageous for them. Good. Zhang Jile felt that things were looking good. His dazzling 100 blossoms had entered his predicted range and started moving more carefully. It would be best to look as natural as possible to prevent his opponent from noticing him. Little cold hands didn't make any troublesome movements, which made him feel gratified. Keeping a rookie in the dark about his motives wasn't anything special. What was more rare was that Ye Xiu didn't seem to have noticed either. What a great opportunity. What should I do next? This situation probably could not be maintained for long. Ye Xiu would certainly notice it sooner or later. Zhang Jile had started to ponder as he moved. Finally, he took a crucial step towards Little Cold Hands. But then, Little Cold Hands moved. Right when Zhang Jile thought he had succeeded, Little Cold Hands took a step, instantly making it so that Zhang Jile's plans fell one step short. It was just one step. Most people probably hadn't noticed it, and of the people who had, how many of them understood the implications of this single step? And when he finally moved, Pan Lin shouted. He hadn't realized that the single step taken by Little Cold Hands was a step away from great danger. This time, Li Yibo wasn't caught unprepared because he had been paying close attention to dazzling 100 blossoms and tyranny as a whole. Just before Pan Lin cried out those words, he was about to say how Little Cold Hands was about to meet much misfortune. But with that single step, those words were caught in Li Yibo's throat. What came afterwards was astonishment. Was it a coincidence? Or was it intentional? If it was intentional, and Wenyi's observational abilities were incredible. And he dared to do it at the final moment. Such confidence and gall was praiseworthy. Sure enough, Happy's rookies are all monsters. Even if Wenyi's technical skills were poor, he was outstanding in terms of his mental game. Due to his shock, Li Yibo kept this in his heart. He forgot that he should also make some comments. As a result, the viewers outside didn't know the significance of that one step. On stage, Zhang Jile felt it the most. Coincidence or intentional? For a moment, Zhang Jile had the same thoughts as Li Yibo. Next, he needed to test out this question. His dazzling 100 blossoms took another step. Little Cold Hands retreated another 2 steps. It's intentional. He wants to divert our attention. The difference in one step was the difference between rational and irrational. If they focused their offensive onto little cold hands, whether it was just himself or the entire team, the outcome would be much worse. It would be better to continue attacking Lord Grim and Dancing Rain. But even if they continued attacking Lord Grim and Dancing Rain because of their slight adjustments to come here, they had sacrificed a bit of their offense as well. Not good. The new step that Dazzling 100 Blossoms had taken to test Little Cold Hands hadn't been a wise choice. He had been too eager to know the answer. It was just a single step, yet because of it, a small opening had appeared in Tyranny's encirclement on Ye Xiu and Sima Cheng. Ye Xiu, were you waiting for this opportunity? Sure enough, Zhang Jiao didn't see incorrectly. Ye Xiu grasped this opening. Boom, boom, boom. Dancing Rain's cannon fire came from under the cover of Lord Grim's umbrella. In an instant, the two seized that tiny opening and rushed out. The only who could block them was Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder. But at this moment, the small screen on the broadcast focusing on Boundless Sea showed movement. Boundless Sea locked onto Dark Thunder and rushed at him. Lin Jingyan understood Fang Rui. How could Fang Rui not understand Lin Jingyan? Between them, the only way to deal with the other was to seize a strategic moment. And this time, Fang Rui had succeeded. In the end, he helped Ye Xiu and Sima Cheng escape, thoroughly destroying Tyranny's encirclement. The viewers were stunned. Even now, they didn't know that the single step that Wenyi had made at the final moment was the reason for all of these changes. Falling short, Zhang Jiao felt extremely nauseous. He had felt this sort of defeat who knew how many times. Chapter 1510, Stubborn People Who Refuse to Change. Chapter 1510. Stubborn People Who Refuse to Change. Translator. Namiyumi Editor. Namiyumi, small trick. 2 words popped up in Tyranny's chat. Before Zhang Xinji gave any orders, Han Wenking's Desert Dust rushed out. His target was Little Cold Hands, not Lord Grim or Dancing Rain, who had just escaped. In the end, Han Wenking and Zhang Xinji had been partners for many years. With this sudden change in circumstances, he reacted the fastest, grasping Zhang Xinji's thoughts before the words came out. The formation shifted towards Little Cold Hands, who had been their backup choice in case of an accident. Now that an accident had happened, Little Cold Hands was absolutely the better target compared to Lord Grim and Dancing Rain. Those two had broken through their encirclement and convened together with Fang Rui. If Wenyi supported from the side as well, Happy could contend with Tyranny directly. On the other hand, Wenyi's Little Cold Hands was separated from the other three. Desert Dust took a big stride forward. It looked as if he were planning on attacking Little Cold Hands, but at the same time, he cut off contact between Wenyi and the others on Happy. Reliable. He followed Zhang Xinji's reliable strategies. If this had been the old Tyranny, he would have chased after Lord Grim and Dancing Rain, fighting until his last breath. Han Wenking's Desert Dust would have certainly been at the forefront of the pursuit. The others on Tyranny saw Zhang Xinji's orders and immediately reacted. They were slightly slower than Han Wenking, but they weren't too late. They immediately began coordinating with Han Wenking. And Wenyi immediately had Little Cold Hands retreat, but when Li Yibo saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh. "What's wrong, Coach Li?" Pan Lin asked. It was very rare for Li Yibo to express such clear emotions during the playoffs. He's not experienced enough. In the end, Wenyi is too inexperienced. He could have waited for a bit longer to see if Ye Xiu and the others could open up the situation and convene with him, but by running away, he's pulling away from Ye Xiu and the others, making it more difficult for them to help him. Li Yibo explained. Right. Pan Lin thought about it and realized that Li Yibo was correct. Tyranny's Han Wenking was fast, but surrounding Little Cold Hands in a short amount of time was impossible. Their intent was to set up an offensive towards Little Cold Hands, restricting Happy's movements and seizing the initiative. By having Little Cold Hands immediately run away, and Wenyi was actually helping Tyranny. If they were able to completely separate Wenyi from the rest of Happy, it wouldn't just be taking the initiative, but taking the win. How could Tyranny's old generals miss such an opportunity? Burst. After conserving their energy for an entire season, if they didn't burst forth facing such a key opportunity, when else would they? Boom, boom, boom. Explosions would always be the loudest sounds on the battlefield. Zhang Jile's dazzling 100 blossoms went all out, not holding back on any of his attacks. A beautiful symphony of light and shadows was put on display. Lin Jingyan's dark thunder immediately became more agile. He kept his distance from Lord Grim, Dancing Rain, and Boundless Sea, using brawler skills like Provoke to harass them. Using a tiger's mouth to unsheath the blade was a phrase that suited his actions perfectly. Qin Mayun's -9 degrees attacked Little Cold Hands the most directly. However, his offense wasn't to block him but to urge him to move faster. Tyranny hoped to see Little Cold Hands run faster. The faster the better for Tyranny. At this point, all of the viewers understood what Li Yibo had been talking about. The important healer had been cut off from the rest of his team and was in danger of being chased down and killed. This situation was far more dangerous than Sima Cheng and Ye Xiu being trapped. "Why isn't Ye Xiu reminding Wenyi?" Pan Lin said anxiously. "It's too late," Li Yibo sighed. How could Tyranny leave an opening for Happy to rescue him? As soon as Wenyi took the first misstep, his retreat path was blocked off by Tyranny. In the end, Tyranny's players are too experienced. Experience. It was the most valuable treasure that old players had, and it constantly shined in Team Tyranny. Their team had the 3 most experienced players in the Glory Alliance apart from Ye Xiu. Run. Right now, Little Cold Hands was just running. No one said anything in the Happy chat to stop him. His Little Cold Hands ran for his life. It was his only choice. However, this was exactly what Tyranny wanted. The faster he ran, the farther he ran, the easier it would be for Tyranny. Finally, Little Cold Hands ran until Ye Xiu and the others could no longer see him. They weren't able to maintain the distance between them because Tyranny had been attacking them the entire time. Lord Grim and Dancing Rain weren't doing too well in terms of health after just narrowly escaping. Tyranny had a healer assisting them too, so there was no way for them to fight too forcefully. What's more, under Zhang Xinji's adjustments, Tyranny didn't become imbalanced from pursuing Little Cold Hands too excessively. As Little Cold Hands ran, Tyranny put less attention towards him. As Little Cold Hands gradually vanished from Happy's view, Tyranny also began to stop chasing after him, until only Han Wenking's Desert Dust was the only one left in pursuit. Han Wenking versus a rookie healer. On the other side, Ye Xiu, Sima Cheng, and Fang Rui, who weren't in the best conditions, had to fight against 4 players from Tyranny, among them a healer. "It's over," Li Yibo really wanted to say these words. If this were the regular season, he would have made the conclusion. However, this was the playoffs. There was mystery all around, and he didn't dare hastily reach a verdict. What else could happen? Li Yibo carefully pondered over this question and thought of Happy's Luo Jai. The battle had reached this step already, yet Luo Jai still wasn't going to make his appearance. He wasn't sent to the stage just to watch on the sides, could he? Wait. A thought flashed through Li Yibo's mind. Han Wenking's Desert Dust chased after Little Cold Hands to kill him on his own. What if Luo Jai suddenly appeared to rescue Little Cold Hands? A summoner with a cleric's help could easily bully an extremely close-range fighter like a striker. I think. A question mark jumped out when Li Yibo thought this. Under normal circumstances, the striker would definitely be the one bullied. However, if the striker was Han Wenking, the fierce tiger Han Wenking, and Wenyi, Luo Jai, these 2 were still university students and newcomers to the pro scene. Would they be able to hold down a wild tiger? I'll just have to wait and see. Li Yibo shifted his gaze. Even if the two took down Han Wenqing, they would have to go through much effort. What about the other end? Could Ye Xiu and the two others on Happy hold on against a strong offensive from 4 players on Tyranny? If the trade happened, the ones to lose out would probably be Happy. As expected, there are no holes, truly worthy of Zhang Xinji. Li Yibo's final season at Tyranny was the year that Zhang Xinji joined the alliance. That season, Tyranny defeated Excellent Era, who was going for their 4th consecutive championship win, stopping their dominance over the Glory League. Zhang Xinji had left a deep impression on Li Yibo that season. He felt a bit ashamed, though. At that time, the seniors had paid more attention to this junior's robot-like lifestyle. Zhang Xinji's talent at Glory had been overlooked due to his peculiarities. It wasn't until they won the championships with this healer who never made mistakes did they finally realize how incredible of a talent he was. Separated by many years, Li Yibo looked at Zhang Xinji again. Zhang Xinji was more skilled and more experienced, but his style hadn't changed one bit. Everyone talked about Han Wenqing's 10 years of perseverance, but in reality, what never changed in Tyranny was Zhang Xinji. No. It'd be easier to kill him than change his habits. 2 stubborn guys who refused to change had paired with each other despite their incompatibilities, yet they stubbornly persisted for so many years. They had won a championship, but they didn't start a new era of dominance. Perhaps this was where the issue lay. They made a few changes, but there were places where they never changed. And now, one of them had finally made some adjustments. Even though much of it was out of helplessness due to the passing of time, it wasn't a bad thing. The 2 core members of Tyranny, their sharpest spear and sturdiest shield, were finally fighting alongside each other together as one for the first time. Win. Li Yibo had always been a very professional commentator. But at this moment, when he saw Tyranny realize the potential that they hadn't been able to realize for many years, at the final moments of Han Wenqing's career, he didn't hesitate to stand by Tyranny. He could only hope that it hadn't come too late. He hoped to see these 2 win another championship. Go Tyranny! Li Yibo cheered in his heart. He didn't lose his rationale, though. If he expressed such obvious bias during the broadcast, he would probably be laid off. At this moment, the broadcast had finally cut to Luo Ji's perspective. Concealed light had been moving the entire time. A small screen had followed along for quite some time now. From his position on the map, Li Yibo could confirm Luo Ji's movements. Concealed light wasn't moving to attack Han Wenqing. Instead, he was rushing over to the side of the battle with more people. As expected, Team Happy wasn't stupid. Having Luo Ji ambush Han Wenqing definitely wasn't a wise move. However, how much help could he provide to the other side? Tyranny's side had a healer. Even if it was a 4v4, Happy would still be at a disadvantage. Perhaps Happy was regretting not putting Tang Ru in first. With her energy and drive, no matter if she attacked Desert Dust or joined the other battle, she would have a better chance at turning the situation around. What could Luo Ji do? Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com Chapter 1511, starting at 13 minutes 32 seconds Chapter 1511. Starting at 13 minutes 32 seconds Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami Happy's Luo Ji had finally appeared on the battlefield after 13 minutes and 32 seconds. All of the viewers watching were having trouble processing it. By this point, most team competitions were at the halfway mark. The faster matches would almost be over. But in this match, one of Happy's players would only just be joining in on the fight at this time, with one player missing the entire time. How had Happy survived up until now? When the viewers looked at the time and thought about this question, they were put into a daze. The more attentive viewers couldn't help but think of Happy's first match against Blue Rain in the playoffs. In that team competition, hadn't Happy been hiding one of their players while fighting against Happy? Today's match and that day's match were looking very similar. How had Happy won that time? When they searched through their memories to look for an idea, they suddenly remembered. Fuck, what win? Happy lost that team competition, relying on their lead in the group arena to barely win that round. But today, Happy only had a 1-point lead from the group arena. If they just narrowly lost the team competition like that match, it would end in a draw. Happy's goal for this match couldn't possibly be a draw, right? They couldn't think of an answer, so they could only wait and see. Devil World Flower. Concealed Light's first summon was incredibly standard. He summoned a Devil World Flower to stabilize the battle. Then, boom boom boom, smoke and fire pervaded the area, burning the Devil World Flower into ashes. Ha ha ha. The crowd burst into laughter. Gunners were the bane of the Devil World Flower. Their long-ranged attacks reached farther than the Devil World Flower could. Since the Devil World Flower couldn't move, it was basically a practice target for gunners. In addition, the Devil World Flower took additional damage from light and fire elemental attacks. Gunner bullets naturally contained fire elemental properties, making it even easier for them to deal with Devil World Flowers. As a result, when facing a team with gunners, the usefulness of Devil World Flowers was very situational. Tyranny had 2 gunners, yet Luo Jai's first thought was to summon a Devil World Flower. Before the flower could even bloom, the 2 gunners shot it down. Tyranny fans laughed wildly. This rookie, who had been hiding for 13 minutes and 32 seconds, looked ridiculous. But soon afterwards, they stopped laughing. The Devil World Flower wasn't able to display its crowd control, but in that instant, a gap had appeared in the 2 gunners' offense. It wasn't that Zhang Jiao and Qin Mayan didn't know about this issue, but they had no choice. The placement of that Devil World Flower had been very tricky. If they hadn't eliminated it instantly, it would have interfered with Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder, creating a gap in Tyranny's offense. In comparison, a brawler's ability to control the field was stronger than theirs, which was why the 2 gunners didn't hesitate to attack the Devil World Flower to minimize the opening created. But no matter how small the opening was, there was still an opening. Only a few players could grasp such a small opening, and unfortunately for Tyranny, Ye Xiu happened to be one of them. Shining Cut. A cold light flashed and Lord Grim instantly covered a length of distance from his original position. Brick. Lin Jingyan's Dark Thunder hurriedly threw a brick towards the back of Lord Grim's head. Pa! Suddenly, boundless sea cut across the field, leaping horizontally into the air, knocking the brick away. This sort of move required not only precise inputs but also accurate prediction. There perhaps might be no one but Fang Rui who could have accomplished this. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of cannon fire soon followed. Suma Cheng's dancing rain fired her cannon as she moved her target, immovable rock. After Lord Grim used Shining Cut, he borrowed the trees as cover to avoid the gunfire from Tyranny's 2 gunners. At this point, his next target was very obvious: immovable rock. Grasping this small opening, Happy didn't run away. Instead, they launched a fierce counterattack targeting Tyranny's healer. But Zhang Xinji didn't feel pressured. Happy's end goal was to retreat. By targeting immovable rock, they would force Tyranny to retreat to protect him. But even if he knew what Happy's plans were, there was nothing he could do about it, because if he ignored them, Happy had the capability to kill him in one wave. In that case, it would become a trade. Happy would kill him but would suffer heavy damage from the rest of Tyranny. However, whether this trade was worth it depended on how Han Wenqing handled and Wenyi. Zhang Xinji would always choose the most reliable path. A question mark appeared in the Tyranny chat. Zhang Xinji wanted to know what Han Wenqing's situation was like. The reply was a bunch of ellipses. These ellipses meant that Han Wenqing didn't have an Wenyi in his grasps yet. Zhang Xinji sighed. He could only give up on this trade. if he couldn't confirm the outcome of Han Wenking's battle, and Wenyi might be able to rely on his familiarity with the terrain to run a circle around Han Wenking, convening back with his team. In that case, Happy would have their healer, while Tyranny would have no healer. Or perhaps, the corner of this map was a support zone. After Happy took him down and suffered heavy injuries as a result, they would sub in with their healthy sixth player and rescue little cold hands. Then, with the help of a healer, facing an alone Han Wenking, all sorts of possibilities flew through Zhang Xinji's mind. He wasn't sure which of these was Happy's true intent, but he knew that if Tyranny didn't make adjustments to protect him, the outcome would not be certain. As a result, a new order came from Zhang Xinji. His immovable rock would retreat, the two gunners would suppress Lord Grimm, while Lin Jingyan's dark thunder would retreat as well. As Zhang Xinji expected, Fang Rui and Sima Cheng immediately went on the offensive, breaking past Lin Jingyan's defensive zone. The battles on both ends began shifting away from each other. Everything had changed, starting from Luo Jai's Devil World Flower, the Devil World Flower that had been incinerated before it could even be fully summoned. The changes hadn't stopped yet. Even though Zhang Xinji pursued stability, he wouldn't just obediently comply with the opponent's intentions. At any moment, he would always look for the possibility of a victory by rushing the opponents. The retreating Dark Thunder suddenly dashed forward. Street Riot. He unexpectedly used a high-level skill. Bricks, bottles, needles, all sorts of low-level brawler skills began being thrown over. His target, Lord Grimm. Although he let Fang Rui and Sima Cheng go, Zhang Xinji wanted Ye Xiu to stay. When he saw that Happy wanted to attack him, he had asked Han Wenking for his situation. It had taken some time for him to come to a decision. If he made the trade, the time used up here wasn't meaningless. But if he didn't make the trade, then Tyranny could take advantage of this time used up. Because of the delay, Happy had continued their aggression, which meant they would continue moving deeper into the enemy fray to reach him. The further in the target, the harder it was to retreat. Fang Rui and Sima Cheng had been let go. But once Tyranny focused on Lord Grimm because he had ventured a bit deeper into their territory, trying to escape now would be much more difficult. Happy could try to loop around and rescue him, but if they did that, Tyranny would still have the initiative. Ye Xiu, who was trapped, would be their bargaining chip. You'd better not think of leaving. Dark Thunder's Street Riot threw out a bunch of CC skills. Ye Xiu could not ignore it. Shua. The myriad manifestations umbrella opened. Ye Xiu wanted to use the shield to force his way past it. Rumble. A wave of energy split apart the air in front of him. Lord Grimm was pushed back. Implosion grenade. The instant Zhang Jiao saw Lord Grimm open his umbrella, he tossed a grenade. Once the umbrella propped open, a dead angle would appear. Zhang Jiao recognized this point and tossed the implosion grenade where Ye Xiu couldn't see it. Ye Xiu wasn't able to force his way through. The others on Happy hastily went to his rescue. An eagle flew past. Concealed Light, who had only appeared on the battlefield after 13 minutes and 32 seconds, only now officially joined the battle. A Thunder Eagle was let out, firing a bolt of lightning towards Dark Thunder. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the gunfire, the Thunder Eagle stuttered. Qin Mayan's -9 degrees struck the Thunder Eagle, stopping the eagle from moving in the air. Godlike aim. It was a stunning display. Several Tyranny fans began shouting, "Gunner King." The Thunder Eagle had been stopped, but the 4-beast-style Concealed Light had more than one summon at his disposal. Spirit Cat. The nimble Spirit Cat suddenly scurried out from the grass. Bang! Floating bullet. The Spirit Cat was knocked into the air. Then a grenade met with the Spirit Cat in the air. The shockwave from the explosion sent the Spirit Cat tumbling back to where it came from. The audience began laughing again. Every move that Luo Jai made looked like a joke. Tyranny dealt with them easily with flashy moves. But this time, their laughter halted even more abruptly than last time. Lord Grim had broken through. Happy Suma Cheng and Fang Rui didn't even need to act. Just Luo Jai's two summons gave Ye Xiu enough of an opening to break through. No matter how unskilled the viewers were at this point, they had realized that Luo Jai wasn't as simple as they thought. Retreat. With Lord Grim out, Happy began retreating. Chase. Tyranny went after them. They had no choice but to give chase because Han Wenking's desert dust was chasing after Wenyi's little cold hands alone. They had to prevent Han Wenking from getting surrounded by Happy. Zhang Xinji asked for the situation again. Chapter 15:12, Terrifying Pressure and Precise Calculation. Chapter 15:12, Terrifying Pressure and Precise Calculation. Translator, Namyumi Editor, Namyumi, ellipses. Han Wenking's response was more ellipses. He was only facing a cleric. Against a cleric without any outside support, if he could get close, killing the cleric would only be a matter of time. But Han Wenking's reply was unexpectedly the same as before. Ellipses. This meant that even now, he wasn't able to close in on Wenyi's little cold hands. Zhang Xinji felt surprised. Everyone who understood the meaning behind these ellipses felt surprised. The broadcast immediately switched the focus to the battle over there. Sure enough, desert dust was still chasing after little cold hands. Let alone Tyranny's players and the viewers watching them, even Han Wenking himself was feeling surprised. Healer classes moved slowly compared to other classes and didn't have any movement skills to help them move faster either. It was true that strikers needed to get extremely close to their opponents before they could start attacking, but strikers were naturally fast classes unlike healers. Along with several movement skills, their movement should be much faster than clerics. But he wasn't able to catch him. Was it because Little Cold Hands was wearing equipment that buffed his movement speed? Happy had used this sort of strategy before in the Challenger League. A fast cleric restricted the opponents to a certain extent, but this match, Little Cold Hands was wearing his proper high-crit healing equipment. His movement speed was the same as a normal cleric, slower than average. Yet Han Wenking's desert dust was just unable to chase him down. Although Han Wenking was surprised, he knew the reason why. Because of the terrain. And Wenyan was extremely familiar with this residential area. In addition, the terrain wasn't flat. There were many buildings on top of the trees, some with 2 or 3 floors. Little Cold Hands wasn't fast, but he took advantage of the terrain, nimbly moving in and out. At first, the audience had felt astonished that Han Wenking wasn't able to catch up to Happy's weak point, their healer. But after the broadcast showed his pursuit of him, everyone felt that it was the opposite. Han Wenking not being thrown off by Wenyi and sticking so tightly to him was truly impressive feat. It was indeed impressive. However, the one who was shocked the most wasn't Han Wenking, but Wenyi. He thought that he had studied and practiced this area more than enough. Losing an opponent here shouldn't be hard at all, but it turned out that he was wrong. Han Wenking. Even though Wenyi admired Zhang Xinji the most, as a Tyranny fan, how could he not respect Tyranny's captain, Han Wenking? He had watched Tyranny for many years and was very familiar with the team. But after entering the pro scene, he quickly understood that the might he saw while sitting in front of the TV was very different from personally experiencing it for himself in a match. The feeling of oppression that he got from Han Wenking chasing after him made Wenyi's palms sweat, but he didn't dare take a pause to wipe it away. Under this enormous pressure, the confidence that he had from his familiarity with the terrain was gradually being whittled away. And Wenyi didn't know how much longer he could endure. Han Wenking had the time to respond to his team with ellipses, but for Wenyi, the only thing that he had the time for was to keep running for his life. He had no time to do anything else. He didn't even dare to blink at this point. He needed to carefully and quickly make decisions. To think he hasn't made a mistake yet. Han Wenking's astonishment towards Wenyi gradually shifted from his familiarity with the map to his calmness under heavy pressure. The public's evaluation wasn't wrong. Even if Happy's rookies didn't have the skill, their spirits were incomparable. A rookie was being chased so closely by him, yet the rookie was still able to keep a clear head, quickly and accurately making the right decision every time. Han Wenking couldn't help but think of another player, his partner for many years, Zhang Xinji. Although the two were partners, when Zhang Xinji first joined Tyranny in Season 4, Han Wenking's outlook towards him was as a senior player towards a new rookie. However, the Zhang Xinji at that time was similar to this in Wenyi. No matter the situation, there was no sign of panic. Calm and careful were the characteristics of this rookie, becoming the sturdy shield for Team Tyranny. And Wenyi's technical skills couldn't compare to the rookie Zhang Xinji of that time, but his mentality and his willpower gave Han Wenking a feeling of déjà vu. But he wasn't going to let up. Let alone a player similar to Zhang Xinji. Even if Zhang Xinji had transferred to a different team and were in Wenyi's position, he would still chase after him with everything he had. To him, that was the greatest respect he could give. Chase. Continue chasing. After replying to Zhang Xinji's inquiry, Han Wenking wasn't swayed. He didn't feel embarrassed because he couldn't even catch a rookie. He wholeheartedly focused on this one goal. No matter what, he would chase down Little Cold Hands. At this moment, Little Cold Hands suddenly moved horizontally. Suddenly changing directions was a common method to escape from an opponent, but up until now, Wenyi had never used such a method. A sudden turn tested the opponent's reaction speed. If the opponent's reaction speed was fast enough and adjusted prompt enough, it also gave the opponent an opportunity to catch up. That was why Wenyi had never used this sort of risky method, because he clearly knew his value as a healer in a team competition. No matter how poor his technical skill was, or if he was the weakness of the team, as long as he was alive, he would be a huge threat. As a result, Wenyi had always been exceptionally cautious. But at this moment, he suddenly took a risk that he had never taken before. Soaring Tiger. Han Wenking's Desert Dust immediately used a powerful skill, ferociously pouncing on him. The entire stadium erupted into cheers, but it missed. It was just by a bit, but the Soaring Tiger missed its mark. But when Han Wenking chose this skill, he had thought of what came after. The Soaring Tiger missed, but he hit the tree. He crouched down and borrowed the tree to shoot forward. With this, Desert Dust's speed increased sharply, moving like a flying artillery shell. But Wenyi seemed to have known as Little Cold Hands rolled to the side. Desert Dust missed again, and this time he could not immediately turn like before. 1,000-ton drop. Han Wenking could only use this skill to let Desert Dust fall faster. However, by leaping off the tree and then using this skill to fall, Desert Dust had moved a large distance. When he turned back to find his target, Little Cold Hands had widened the distance between them. I fell for it. Han Wenking continued to give chase, while sighing helplessly. He wasn't a brainy player who was proficient at planning. Although his opponent was a rookie, it looked like he was better at these sorts of schemes than him. Wenyi once again took advantage of the terrain, calculating what Han Wenking would do, and then courageously took the risk to widen the distance between them. Wenyi had been a fan of Tyranny before. He was familiar with Han Wenking. And after becoming a pro player, this familiarity as a fan naturally became an understanding of an opponent. This time, he used what he knew about Han Wenking to succeed. The viewers and even Pan Lin and Li Yibo weren't thinking as much. However, compared to Han Wenking, they knew more clearly why Wenyi took such a risk. Happy had sent a message in the team chat. Ye Xiu had called for Wenyi to convene with them. Would they succeed? When Ye Xiu sent out the call, everyone had been watching Desert Dust sticking closely to Little Cold Hands and let out a big question mark. but Wenyi immediately completed a beautiful escape, dispelling their doubts. But good things don't last. After having a specific direction to move towards, Wenyi's escape choices weren't as flexible anymore. He needed to follow a general direction and make a decision. As for Han Wenqing, he also received a message from Zhang Xinji, telling Han Wenqing their coordinates and asking Han Wenqing for his coordinates. With this, Han Wenqing was able to see through Wenyi's intent. Now that he knew Wenyi's aim, he could make predictions. Han Wenqing was no longer chasing after Wenyi brainlessly like before. Desert Dust's pursuit became more orderly. Sometimes, people felt like he wasn't chasing little cold hands. Instead, it looked like he happened to be following the same route as him, and Wenyi's attempts at feints gradually lose their effectiveness too. I've been seen through, seeing Desert Dust getting closer step by step, and Wenyi suddenly realized where the issue lay. But at this point, it was too late to regret his previous actions. Keeping running, his best choice was to simply run as fast as he could. Tricks would only be a waste of time. Next, it would be a contest of speed. However, since his opponent was a striker, how could he hope to outspeed him as a cleric? And Wenyi could only hope that he could meet up with the rest of Happy before his opponent caught up to him. So he sprinted. He didn't spare his stamina, using everything he had to sprint as fast as he could. And Wenyi wanted to cover the greatest distance in the shortest amount of time. But unfortunately, if he could do it, so could Han Wenqing. As long as he caught up to little cold hands, Desert Dust wouldn't need stamina to finish him off. Sprint, all-out sprint. Han Wenqing's Desert Dust immediately sprinted after him. The distance between the two characters closed at a visible speed. "He's caught up," Pan Lin shouted. Launching kick. Desert Dust jumped and kicked. It hadn't been easy catching up to little cold hands, so of course he wouldn't use a knockback skill to help push little cold hands away. He used the striker's knock-up skill. He wanted to send little cold hands into the air and then slowly deal with him. But boom, boom, boom. 3 rounds of artillery shells exploded between Desert Dust and little cold hands. Little cold hands wasn't hurt, but Desert Dust was blown back by the shockwave. A figure stepped out of the forest and then instantly reached Desert Dust's side, cold light flashing. When did you ever become so shameful, bullying a little kid like that? A merciless message from Ye Xiu popped up in the chat. Chapter 1513, The Resolve of Both Sides. Chapter 1513, The Resolve of Both Sides. Translator, Namyami Editor. Namyami Team Happy and their healer had convened at an opportune time. The Happy fans let out a cheer, while the Tyranny fans let out a sigh of despair. But what about after? Tyranny's fans quickly regained their composure because it wasn't like Happy had the advantage now. Happy had convened with Wenyi, but Tyranny had convened with Han Wenqing as well. Previously, it had been Han Wenqing chasing down Happy's healer. In the other battle, it had been Tyranny with a healer suppressing Happy without a healer. Happy had the disadvantage in both of the battles. Now, they were on an equal playing field with Tyranny. However, with the disadvantage carried over from the previous battles, how would they win on an equal playing field? Happy didn't continue fighting. Ye Xiu's Lord Grim rushed out, and with help from his teammates, he sent Desert Dust flying away. Then Happy immediately turned around to retreat. Of course, Tyranny wasn't going to let them go so easily. This was a perfect opportunity. When it came to direct confrontation, Tyranny had no fear. No more hiding, no more holding back. In an instant, they transformed into the Tyranny that everyone was familiar with and pounced fiercely onto the retreating Happy. Happy didn't fight back. Trees, grass, houses. Happy utilized what they could to hide and avoid Tyranny. A team retreat had its advantages and disadvantages compared to an individual retreat. The advantage was that they could help each other, opening up more varied options. The disadvantage was that a mistake from a single teammate could affect everyone. 2:11. A message suddenly appeared in the Tyranny chat. It wasn't from Zhang Xinji, but Lin Jingyan. 2. 11 pointed to the hour hand positions on a clock. When the others on Tyranny saw Lin Jingyan's message, they immediately locked onto those two directions. The characters at the front of the team rushed towards those two directions. Although Lin Jingyan wasn't the shot caller, there had to be a reason for him giving out these instructions. Desert Dust turned towards the 2 o'clock direction, while Dazzling 100 Blossoms turned towards the 11 o'clock direction. The two soon locked onto their next target. Boundless Sea. Fang Rui's Boundless Sea. Lin Jingyan relied on his understanding of his teammate to grasp this opportunity. Han Wenqing and Zhang Jiao didn't question him and immediately carried out his plan. Boundless Sea was now surrounded by the three of them. Holy Trinity. The three attacked without hesitation. Lin Jingyan was too familiar with Fang Rui's style. His dirty playstyle wasn't something that everyone could keep up with, which was why on the team competition stage, Fang Rui would often wander off from the team on his own. Lin Jingyan understood this point and watched for such an occasion to take place. In one move, they surrounded Boundless Sea, and the rest of Happy could not rescue him immediately because he had separated himself from the team. Rescue him now. Of course they could, but Boundless Sea was already surrounded. If they turned to rescue him, they would have to abandon their original plans to retreat. What's more, whether they could quickly rescue Fang Rui was another question altogether. This was the danger of a team retreat. If you caught one player, you caught the entire team. The three generals attacked Boundless Sea decisively. However, Happy was even more decisive. Tyranny had focused 3 of their members onto Fang Rui, reducing the overall pressure on Happy. Zhang Xinji's immovable rock was just a cleric. His individual threat was limited. Qin Mayan's -9 degrees was not enough to keep Happy's other 4 members there. As a result, Happy ran away. They didn't even stop to pause, decisively abandoning the trapped Fang Rui. They regarded their trapped ally not as a restriction but instead as an opening. How determined! Li Yibo couldn't help but shout. Happy's insistence on running away was rather surprising. It wasn't like abandoning a teammate was never done, but usually the abandoned teammate would be used to trade for the initiative. Right now, Happy abandoning Fang Rui didn't yield them any sort of initiative. All they got was an escape from an unfavorable situation. And then, Happy would lose Fang Rui and would still be in an unfavorable situation. If Tyranny simply employed a strategy where they traded blow for blow, Happy would suffer greatly. After exclaiming in surprise at Happy's resolve, Li Yibo adopted a critical view of Happy's decision. But at the same time, there wasn't much else they could do. Yet after analyzing them, Li Yibo spoke in their defense. A direct confrontation here would be too disadvantageous for Happy. By sacrificing a player, they gain time to reset the battle and formulate a new plan. If they can take advantage of their familiarity with the map, there will be more opportunities in the future. Is that so? Pan Lin was still doubtful, because the more time that Li Yibo mentioned Happy would gain didn't seem like it was coming fast. That was the impression that everyone got. Fang Rui's Boundless Sea was killed incredibly fast. In the blink of an eye, Boundless Sea's name turned gray. Their speed came from their resolve, Tyranny's resolve. After Happy abandoned Fang Rui to escape, Zhang Xinji didn't hesitate to order the entire team to focus all their efforts onto Fang Rui's Boundless Sea. He didn't care about what Happy would do next, nor did he think about using this situation to make any future setups. Quickly kill Boundless Sea. Because a numbers advantage would always be the most reliable and trustworthy advantage on the glory battlefield. If such an opportunity was presented in front of them, there was no need to hesitate. A Chi master wearing cloth armor had low defense. Under Tyranny's full focus, and the watch of the many experienced players on Tyranny, Boundless Sea wasn't even able to use defensive skills like Qi Guard that would let him survive just a bit longer. Boundless Sea's health dropped to 0 almost instantly. Then, Tyranny immediately turned around and chased after the rest of Happy that could still clearly be seen. Pan Lin's doubt came from this. How much time had Happy gained from Fang Rui's sacrifice? Li Yibo was also stunned. He didn't think that Tyranny's attacks would be so fierce to the extent that Fang Rui couldn't even put up a struggle before being killed. Happy is in trouble, Li Yibo immediately determined. At this distance, disappearing from Tyranny's sights without a trace was impossible. In the end, Happy would not be able to avoid a direct confrontation, except this time they would have one less player. Where is Happy running away towards? Pan Lin pointed out. The support zone. Li Yibo also saw it. Starting from when Happy abandoned Fang Rui, their retreat direction had been extremely clear, the support zone. This was because their sixth player would come in from the closest support zone to them. Happy needed to hurry and meet up with their sixth player to maintain a 5-member formation before making their next plans. But now, they've switched directions, Pan Lin shouted. Hm. Li Yibo also saw them change directions. After confirming the speed of Tyranny's pursuit, Happy turned away from the support zone. Tang Ru, who had been automatically loaded in, immediately saw Ye Xiu's instructions in the team chat, telling her where to go. Happy needs to get as far away as possible from the support zone. Yibo said, they have no way of avoiding a confrontation with Tyranny. The closer they are to the support zone, the more advantageous it is for Tyranny. Yeah, Pan Lin nodded his head. He didn't need Li Yibo to give any further explanation. When one had a numbers advantage, trades were the most common and most reliable strategy. The closer they were to the support zone, Tyranny, who still had their sixth player, could quickly keep up their numbers advantage when one of their players was traded away. If the team fight took place far away, though, then while Tyranny's sixth player was rushing over, for a period of time, Happy would temporarily be back on equal footing with Tyranny, a 4v4. Statistically speaking, most turning points took place during this period of time in glory team competitions. The disadvantaged team would often try to turn things around. Tyranny was an experienced team, but Happy had Ye Xiu, who didn't lose to them in terms of experience. From this adjustment, it could be seen that Happy hadn't given up. They were going to put up a fight. Tyranny was in close pursuit. Happy could not shrug them off, but they managed to convene with Tang Ru's soft mist before the fight began. And the meeting point that they chose wasn't simply the place as far away as possible from the support zone. Evidently, this was the place that Happy chose as their battlefield. Tang Ru's soft mist didn't join up with the team directly. Instead, she reached the location first and picked her spot. Ambush. Soft mist was lying in wait for an ambush. The broadcast switched to her view, and it was obvious that was her plan. After seeing Tang Ru's actions, Li Yibo concluded that Happy wanted to decide the match here. The broadcast listed the health and mana on both sides. All of the characters had enough mana to last an entire fight. In terms of health, Happy had a clear disadvantage. When their characters lost health, they didn't have time to replenish it. And Wenny's little cold hands had been running away the entire time. He didn't even have an opportunity to cast an instant heal. Happy wanted to decide the match here, but could they win? No one looked at Happy's chances favorably, even if Tang Ru's soft mist was set up for an ambush. Zhang Xinji was very cautious. Once he saw that Tang Ru's soft mist wasn't with the team, he would most likely be on his guard. With the amount of experience that Tyranny had, how effective would Tang Ru's ambush be? What's more, Tang Ru wasn't the type of player who was good at ambushes. She'd probably be more effective standing in front of Tyranny and fighting them alone. Ye Xiu and the others entered the area. Tyranny hadn't been left behind. The broadcast focused onto soft mist, and the viewers did as well. Her ambush was the one thing that Tyranny was not aware of. Her ambush was probably Happy's last hope. Soft Mist slowly raised her spear. Charge. Rising Dragon soars the sky. Chapter 1514, Favorable Terrain. Chapter 1514, Favorable Terrain. Translator. Namiyami Editor. Namiyami. Starting with a rising dragon soars the sky instead of a dragon breaks the ranks was quite a surprise to the viewers. Those familiar with Tang Ru knew that she loved to initiate with dragon breaks the ranks, and it would have been a very suitable move for her present situation, too. But in the end, her spear turned into a roaring dragon as it flew towards Tyranny. She had mixed up her usual starting move, but it was nothing too surprising for Tyranny. Tang Ru had loaded into the map a while ago, yet there were still no signs of her. From the moment they stepped into this region, the entirety of their surroundings were within their sights. The magic dragon tore into Tyranny's formation, but not a single one of them was hit by it. When using Rising Dragon Soars the Sky, the battle mage needed to maintain a certain distance away. But would that be enough? Due to the long ending lag of the skill, with this skill missing, the counterattack wasn't something that could be resolved through that bit of distance. Zhang Xinji was watching for Tang Ru's next moves. At this point, the dragon was already dissipating. The Rising Dragon Soars the Sky was unable to show its might before being forcefully cancelled. A cancel would result in ending lag as well. However, compared to using the skill to completion, the ending lag would be reduced by half. Careful! Tyranny's two gunners had begun firing at Soft Mist. Zhang Xinji didn't forget to warn his teammates. For Happy, relying on that Rising Dragon Soars the Sky would have been a bit overconfident. He doubted that Happy had placed their hopes onto that skill landing. The real assault would come during these next moments. What will they do? Zhang Xinji quickly thought up several possibilities, and Soft Mist's next moves were indeed within his expectations. Shattering the lands, Soft Mist jumped into the air, swinging her spear heroically. Although the Rising Dragon had missed, it had disrupted Tyranny's formation. In the end, that high-level skill was just a ruse. Her next move would disrupt their formation even further. Soft Mist fell, and a burst of battle chi erupted. The shattering the lands had been within Zhang Xinji's expectations, but Tyranny had no suitable way to deal with this powerful skill. Their only choices were to temporarily retreat or to face it head-on. Reinforced iron bones. The two fighters on Tyranny trembled. The shattering the land sent out a burst of battle chi, sending branches and leaves flying into the air. When it struck the two fighters, it made a loud bang. Their health plummeted. The power of a level 75 skill wasn't something that a low-level defense buff like reinforced iron bones could negate. However, with the super armor, while the battle chi still inflicted damage onto them, it couldn't push them in the slightest. Before the skill had come out, Desert Dust and Dark Thunder had already been charging towards her. The skill was unable to knock them over, and Soft Mist was now stuck in its ending lag. There was no way for her to dodge their pincer attack. Two streaks of blood flew into the air. The whirlpool of battle chi created by shattering the lands instantly dispersed. Had Soft Mist been struck down? When the audience took a closer look, they were dumbfounded. There were, inside the shattering the lands area of effect, not 3 players but 4. What happened? The audience felt dazed at the scene in front of them. The more experienced audience members immediately looked towards the big screen. Sure enough, a replay was being shown. When Desert Dust and Dark Thunder attacked, Soft Mist was still stuck in her ending lag, unable to move. But at the final juncture, Lord Grimm suddenly appeared in front of her. His 2 hands flickered up and down, resulting in 2 streaks of blood. Blood from Desert Dust and Dark Thunder, dual blade crescent flow. The audience members who knew what immediately shouted the skill name out. Dual Blade Crescent Flow was an assassin skill that required dual blades. Against opponents who used attacks to parry, this was a perfect counter. For the user, it was a perfect complement to using attacks to parry. Team 301's captain, Yang Kong, was proficient in this style. Lord Grimm's myriad manifestations umbrella had transformed into two blades, striking down desert dust and dark thunder simultaneously. By the time the audience finished reflecting over and appreciating the play, the situation on the battlefield had already changed. Han Wenking and Lin Jingyan weren't intimidated by the dual-blade crescent flow, but Lord Grimm's sudden interference had surprised them. And Ye Xiu had appeared at the perfect moment. The two weren't able to make any adjustments in time. However, they quickly regained their composure and attacked again. Ye Xiu reacted faster, though. The myriad manifestations umbrella transformed again, and a streak of black swept towards them. Shadow Cloak. Han Wenking and Lin Jingyan immediately saw and recognized the skill. Grabs were still effective against super armor. Their only choice was to dodge. The two had their characters avoid the Shadow Cloak, and these two experienced players wasted no movement. They dodged just outside of the Shadow Cloak's range, their movements incomparably precise. Their timing had been perfect as well. Before the Shadow Cloak disappeared, the two were already stepping forward to counterattack. Slow down. A warning came from Zhang Xinji, but it was too late. Shua. The Shadow Cloak suddenly tightened, wrapping the two characters into a bundle. Han Wenking and Lin Jingyan were stunned. Had they misjudged it? No, the two were clear on this point. Lord Grimm took a step back. Although the two were bound by Shadow Cloak with their super armor, he wouldn't be able to send them away, so he simply retreated. With this retreat, soft mist could be seen. Han Wenking and Lin Jingyan suddenly understood. A battle mage was a mage class, and Shadow Cloak was a low-level skill, so she could learn it too. Lord Grimm used the skill first, and then when soft mist could move again, she immediately followed suit with a Shadow Cloak of her own. The two Shadow Cloaks overlapped with each other, so how could they have distinguished between them? Han Wenking and Lin Jingyan had overlooked this possibility, and only took into account Lord Grimm's Shadow Cloak. Just when they thought they had avoided it, Soft Mist's Shadow Cloak took its place. The two hadn't seen Soft Mist act, but Zhang Xinji had noticed it. However, the warning had come too late. It was just a brief exchange. Lord Grimm and Soft Mist immediately retreated. Zhang Jiao and Qin Maiyun could reach them, but they couldn't keep the two of them there. What's more, Happy's other team members weren't just sitting there watching. Suma Cheng's dancing rain stood to the side, providing support for Lord Grimm and Soft Mist. Chase. Of course, Tyranny had to give chase. Desert Dust and Dark Thunder quickly escaped the Shadow Cloak. Lord Grimm and Soft Mist weren't able to make a clean getaway with just that one skill. In the end, Soft Mist's ambush had given the rest of Happy time to take their positions. But she herself, as well as Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm who had come to rescue her, were still within Tyranny's attack range. Tyranny pursued the two of them fiercely. The three others on Happy quickly occupied the high grounds. The houses in the residential area were scattered all over the forest in picturesque disorder. Zhang Xinji swept over their positions. The three characters on Happy had moved into the rooms on the trees and were standing by the windows. From the window openings, Dancing Rain was attacking, Little Cold Hands was healing, and Concealed Light was controlling his summons in an attempt to provide cover for Ye Xiu and Tang Ru. No, not providing cover but assisting them with their offense. Zhang Xinji saw their formation and immediately understood. Lord Grimm and Soft Mist suddenly stopped. They turned back and rushed towards Desert Dust and Dark Thunder. In the end, Tyranny had been baited by Happy. However, this couldn't be considered a trap. Happy occupied a slightly more favorable position, allowing them to establish a more stable offensive formation. Ye Xiu and Tang Ru had timed their counterattack perfectly. With the stickiness of their close-ranged characters, it would probably be riskier for Tyranny to run away than take the fight. It looks like we'll be deciding the match here. Ye Xiu truly wasn't simple. Happy had been at a disadvantage for the entire period of their pursuit, but by the end of it, he had managed to create a slightly favorable position out of it. But would that slight advantage be enough? Happy was at a numbers disadvantage, and because of Tyranny's pursuit, they weren't able to stop to take a breather and heal themselves up. How could it be so easy for Happy to catch up to Tyranny's lead? Zhang Xinji saw through Happy's biggest weak spot and mercilessly set up arrangements to target it. Attack. Just attack. Tyranny's expertise was in attacking, and the most suitable target at the moment was Lord Grimm. The four focused their fire onto Lord Grimm. So mean, Ye Xiu typed into the chat. Lord Grimm turned around and ran. Zhang Xinji wasn't surprised. Ye Xiu had no reason to stand his ground here. He could see through Happy's strategy. Ye Xiu's and Tang Ru's main responsibility was to keep Tyranny busy. The main damage dealers were the long-ranged classes on the treetops. This wasn't a direct fight, but a war of attrition. Unfortunately, Happy only had two players at the front, Ye Xiu and Tang Ru. If Tang Ru were Fang Rui instead, this situation would be even more favorable for Happy. Fang Rui's dirty playstyle was exactly what was needed here. With Tang Ru's playstyle, when she tried to restrict her opponents, she would usually restrict herself as well. All of these points need to be utilized well. Zhang Xinji thought about what methods would be the most reliable and adjusted his plans accordingly. Tyranny suddenly turned their focus towards Soft Mist. You guys really think you can do as you please, huh? Ye Xiu typed into chat as Lord Grimm returned back. Push towards 1 o'clock, Zhang Xinji ordered. Sima Cheng and the other two on Happy were in an extremely good position, avoiding practically all dead spots. However, even if they individually had no dead spots, they would have a few as a coordinated whole. The 1 o'clock direction was one such hole that Zhang Xinji had noticed. The entirety of Tyranny forced their way over. However, Tang Ru's next moves thwarted Zhang Xinji's intentions. She jumped twice, leaping onto what could be considered the second floor in this area. Pincer. Zhang Xinji was unmoved. How could he overlook the different heights in this terrain? This change was within his expectations. The second floor. There was limited space there. Her options instantly became limited, making it easier to trap her. Tang Ru's decision exposed her lack of experience. Ye Xiu evidently realized that the situation wasn't good. Lord Grimm hastily went over to rescue her, but with the simplicity of the second floor space, Tyranny was able to quickly complete their encirclement. Be careful of the long-ranged classes, Zhang Xinji reminded. Dancing Rain's gunfire could reach her. The two old generals that had rushed onto the second floor didn't need his reminder. They could clearly see the circumstances, knowing where Happy's main attack points were. Boom, boom, boom. Under the cover of Dancing Rain's artillery fire, Tang Ru wanted to escape. Soft Mist, Dragon breaks the ranks. Dodge, this skill had to be avoided. Soft Mist rushed out, striking nothing but a tree. Zhang Xinji frowned. Dragon breaks the ranks couldn't be blocked. She could break through from any direction, but the direction she chose seemed too stupid. But the moment the dragon breaks the ranks struck the tree, an enormous crash could be heard. The second floor on top of the tree suddenly collapsed. Chapter 15:15, An Unbelievable Collapse. Chapter 15:15, An Unbelievable Collapse. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. What happened? Everyone was stunned. Countless people in the crowd stood up, looking around in a panic. Dust and smoke was scattered all around the stage. The lifelike projections caused many people to misunderstand what had happened. They thought that the actual competition stage had collapsed. It wasn't until the stadium broadcasted an explanation repeatedly that the panicked crowd came to a realization. When they looked carefully at the stage again, they saw that the stage was intact. What wasn't intact were the scenes of the match displayed by the projection. That beautiful fairy tale-like forest had been struck by an apocalypse. Everything was destroyed. The buildings and walkways built on top of the trees lost their support and collapsed to the ground. In the group arena, The audience had witnessed the inside of a manor being completely wrecked. However, in comparison to this scene, the level of shock was similar to the difference between an explosion from a grenade and an atomic bomb. What happened? Everyone was obviously curious, but soon afterwards the people with better eyesight could see a figure moving inside this apocalyptic scene. Who was it? They couldn't see the figure clearly. Luckily, the camera zoomed in figure and displayed it on the big screen for everyone to see. Lord Grimm was still moving. What else? Flames, the other end had flames. The camera focused on a different area. Dancing rain, it was Suma Cheng's dancing rain. Her surroundings were collapsing, but she stood there firmly, firing her gun. Firing where? The camera followed the path of her artillery shells and quickly found Tyranny's dazzling 100 blossoms. He wasn't nearly as calm as Dancing Rain. He looked like he had come out from a disaster movie, bitterly seeking to survive. The artillery shells from Dancing Rain landed on him. Zhang Jiao hadn't noticed the attack. He didn't have the energy to. Happy was still attacking. A satellite beam descended from the sky, sweeping over Tyranny. What else? Concealed light. The audience found concealed light. He was the same as Dancing Rain. The collapsing surroundings simply served as a backdrop. It was as if he didn't even see it. He calmly waved his staff, placing 2 symbols on the ground, controlling his summons. Thunder Eagle, Young Wyvern. Summons with flight had a huge advantage in these situations. These 2 summons followed Luo Jai's commands, unobstructed by the terrain. Their attacks weren't towards Tyranny. The fireballs and thunderbolts swept through the forest, exacerbating the collapse. Could this apocalyptic scene have been created by this rookie, Luo Jai? After realizing this point, everyone thought of the word strategy. Had all of this been a part of Happy's strategy? They couldn't help but examine the outcome of this strategy. How should they examine it? By looking at the health on Tyranny's characters. A devastating sight. Tyranny's situation was too horrible to describe. Tyranny originally held the advantage in health, but with one move, the sky and earth had reversed. All 5 characters on Tyranny had experienced a massive drop in health. What's worse, it hadn't ended yet because Happy was still attacking them amidst this chaos. Happy's assault was with rhythm and thought. Suma Cheng's Dancing Rain led the way. Then Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm, Tang Ru's Soft Mist, and the summons from Luo Jai's Concealed Light joined in. As for Tyranny, everyone was the same as Zhang Jiao. They had no way of making any decisions in this chaos. Even if they were old generals, none of them had ever experienced the entire team trapped in a collapsing forest. They couldn't make any contact with each other. Everyone was trapped in their own predicament. They tried to grasp their opponent's attacks and counterattack, but the outcome was unsatisfactory. Happy held the initiative, utilizing this unbelievable collapse to thoroughly crush Tyranny. Who died first didn't matter. The names of Tyranny's 5 characters turned gray one after the other. They had a 6th player, but did it matter? Happy had 5 and not a single one missing. Coach Li. When Pan Lin saw the 4th name on Tyranny turn gray, he came back to his senses. He and Li Yibo had been completely dumbstruck during this period of time, not uttering a single sound. No one in the broadcast team reminded them. Everyone was staring blankly at the scene in front of them. This. Li Yibo regained his composure, but apart from saying this, he didn't know what else to say. Tyranny's 6th player by Yanfei's elementalist Rhoda had entered the match, rushing towards the battlefield without any second thoughts. No matter the situation, Tyranny's young heroes wouldn't back down. But everyone knew that there was nothing he could do. Not even a miracle could save Tyranny at this point. The match was over. What they needed to do was review this final astonishing scene. What had happened? Even though Pan Lin had called for Li Yibo, he ultimately didn't ask this question. He knew that, let alone Li Yibo, no one in the entire world had ever witnessed such a wide-scale collapse in a glory competition before. I feel like, Happy had intentionally set it up, Li Yibo guessed. even though he didn't dare believe that it was possible to set up such a frightening scene, seeing how Happy came out of it safe and sound, and then calmly and efficiently wiped out tyranny, it could be seen that all of this was planned. How did they do it? Pan Lin asked. In the end, he finally asked this question. Those were the only words going through his head right now. Apart from these words, he couldn't think of anything else. How did they do it? Li Yibo laughed dryly. How could he know? But when he turned to look, he suddenly focused on a single character, Concealed Light. Luo Jai, Concealed Light. Concealed Light had joined the battle 13 minutes and 32 seconds after it had begun. What had he been doing before then? Li Yibo realized something, and hastily had the director find a replay from Concealed Light's perspective. Luo Jai, it really was Luo Jai. He hadn't joined the battle until 13 minutes and 32 seconds later. Apart from hiding together with his teammates at first, Concealed Light had been busy in this forest area the entire time. This calamity had been brought about by him. "It's Luo Jai," Li Yibo said. This time, the broadcast displayed a replay of what Luo Jai's Concealed Light had been busy doing at the beginning. But don't ask me how he did it. I don't know either. Luo Jai was just one person. But he was a summoner, so he could summon many servants to do his bidding. The scene shown in front of everyone seemed to be a busy construction site. All sorts of summons were fiercely attacking the surroundings under the Concealed Light's orders. Is he breaking apart all the parts supporting the buildings? Pan Lin said. He broke them all. It's clear that he needs to be able to time when the place collapses, Li Yibo said. Pan Lin wanted to how he did that, but this time Li Yibo had been prepared. He had preemptively said, "Don't ask me, I don't know." In the end, Pan Lin's "how did he do it?" became a sigh, because this could probably be answered by no one but Luo Jai himself. "I really want to go to the post-match press conference now," Li Yibo said. This question would definitely be the highlight of the post-match press conference. The brilliance of the group arena and the other parts of the team competition had probably been forgotten by now. Everyone's attention was on this question. The match officially ended and Happy won the team competition with a 5-point lead. When Bai Yanfei's Rhoda died, the surroundings hadn't entirely collapsed yet. There were a few places that were still shuddering. Apart from the astonishment at the turn of events, everyone was also in praise of Glory's in-game mechanics. It was over. Happy had won. For Happy's fans, this was naturally something to be excited about. The Tyranny fans were silent. How could they be happy about such a defeat? The two teams lined up on stage. After the 6 players on Tyranny came out from the player booths, they raised their heads to look at the big screen in the stadium because the highlights of the match would always be played during this time. How could they have forgotten about what had just happened? They needed to know the answer. At the end, when the two teams lined up, the 6 players on Tyranny were all looking at Luo Jai, who was standing at the end. Ye Xiu, Suma Cheng, Fang Rui. No matter how big of a star at this moment, they were nothing but air. Finally, Ye Xiu let out a laugh, taking the initiative to shake Han Wenking's hand. "You were probably scared out of your mind, no," Ye Xiu said. "Even you couldn't have done that," Han Wenking said. "Ha ha," Ye Xiu laughed and didn't explain. He shook Zhang Xinji's hand and asked, "You couldn't figure it out either, right?" Zhang Xinji shook his head in honesty. Yes, even he only knew that Luo Jai had been the cause for everything. He didn't know how he did it, and if someone asked him to do it, he wouldn't have been able to do it either. "Sorry for your loss," Ye Xiu shook Zhang Jiao's hands. "Sorry for your loss, my ass," Zhang Jiao cursed. "What kind of people are your team members?" When it was his turn, Lin Jingyan spoke up first. Chapter 15:16 can be casually accomplished. Chapter 15:16 can be casually accomplished. Translator. Namiyami editor. Namiyami. The match had been decided. But for a playoffs match, the stadium right now was almost too calm. Far too many people hadn't even recovered from the shock yet. This was Happy's stadium. Happy instantly reversing the situation to achieve such a massive victory was something that should have made them go wild. But because of this method, they were still processing what had just happened. It wasn't until the players of both sides completed the post-match exchange and began acknowledging the crowd that many people were roused from their trance. They won, they had indeed won. Oh, suddenly cheers rose up. The passion of the audience had actually come so late. Sitting in front of a television, Yu Wenzhou received a phone call. It was from Huang Xiaoshan, but after he picked up, all he heard was noise, clearly coming from the stadium. Huang Xiaoshan, like the rest of the audience, had been reviewing what had happened and only just now recovered. That was incredible. Yu Wenzhou heard Huang Xiaoshan's voice yelling from the other end. "Ha ha," Yu Wenzhou chuckled. "How did they do it, huh?" Huang Xiaoshan continued to shout. "Who knows?" Yu Wenzhou said. Indeed, who knew the answer to this question? After greeting the crowd, the players of both teams left the stage and returned to the prep rooms. After a brief rest, they would begin the post-match press conference. First up was the losing side, Tyranny. Captain Han Wenqing, Vice Captain Zhang Xinji, and Zhang Jiao were the three representatives. As soon as they arrived, they saw the reporters all eager and anxious to ask their questions. Unsurprisingly, as soon as the conference officially began, the first reporter chosen to speak didn't even bother with the typical sympathetic words for the losing team, instead directly asking what their views were of this match. An extremely formulaic question, but for this match, everyone felt that this question was particularly weighty and went straight to the point. "Extremely unexpected," Han Wenqing answered. Just 2 words. The reporters were clearly unsatisfied. "Could you elaborate?" someone requested. Happy's plan in the team round was indeed unprecedented and surpassed all imagination. We had completely neglected this possibility. An elaboration came from Tyranny's vice captain Zhang Xinji. Even though he was known for his minimal error rate, it was impossible for him to never make an error, and he himself never claimed that title, nor was he ever ashamed to mention his own mistakes. He had categorized this team match as their negligence, but even if he defined it this way, most people probably wouldn't agree with him. That scene shook and shocked the entire glory world. Tyranny shouldn't be blamed for failing to anticipate this possibility. The reporters, of course, didn't pursue this point. Immediately afterward, another reporter asked, "This loss, will it affect Tyranny's upcoming match?" "I don't believe so." Zhang Xinji's words were always that precise. "I believe that this kind of large-scale and accurate plan requires a large amount of preparation. Next match is our Tyranny's home game. 2 matches. This time it was Han Wenqing who added some words from the side. Zhang Xinji smiled. Han Wenqing's 2 matches was equivalent to declaring that next match was Tyranny's victory. This, of course, was what Zhang Xinji expected and hoped for as well, but he wouldn't say these kind of words without confirmation, and besides, he needed to correct Han Wenqing's statement for the point he wanted to make. Next match is Tyranny's home game, and in the case that we win, not in the case, we're winning for sure, okay. Next match and next match, both of them. This time, Zhang Jiao just mercilessly cut him off. Zhang Xinji was helpless, but the reporters were all looking at him, clearly still waiting for him to finish his thought. Zhang Xinji didn't bother to emphasize his "in the case," and instead said, "If we advance to the 3rd match with the randomly chosen map, Happy still will not be equipped to deploy such a strategy again. So for the upcoming matches, we do not need to worry about facing a situation like today's." To the side, Zhang Jiao curled his lip. Evidently, he was still rather dissatisfied by Zhang Xinji's usage of "if" in referring to the 3rd match. Zhang Xinji's analysis was rational and rigorous. Based on this kind of analysis, everyone discovered that indeed, even though Happy had produced a frightening scene this round, all they accomplished was this one round's victory. It had no strategic impact on the upcoming battles. As long as tyranny adjusted their attitude and didn't let this loss affect them too much psychologically, they would be fine. And would this be difficult for tyranny? They were all war veterans. With Zhang Xinji's analysis, this match was just an ordinary away game loss. How could it affect their morale? Tyranny's mood was extremely stable. As the background of the frightening events of this battle, they seemed to have completely adjusted their mood by the end of the match. They were already focused on the next match and even the next match. Whatever Happy had managed to pull off this match, it wouldn't weigh down their thoughts at all. The press conference of the losing side didn't give off the air of being lost or downtrodden at all. This was tyranny. Nothing could stop them from lifting their chests and advancing forward. Afterward, the 3 members who participated in the press conference returned to the prep room. Once everyone gathered their things, they could leave the stadium. The television screen in the prep room, however, was displaying Happy's press conference. No one purposely tried to avoid it. They would occasionally glance over, wanting to hear what Happy was going to say. For their press conference, Happy sent out Ye Xiu, Fang Rui, and Luo Jai, 3 people. It didn't even need to be said who the star of today's show was. As soon as the 3 of them walked out, the cameras flashed nonstop. 80% of them were close-ups of Luo Jai, who felt like he was going to go blind. He had certainly never experienced this sort of greeting before. Congratulations to Happy on a 3rd straight victory. Interviews with the winning side were always a bit more cheerful, carefree, and natural. In general, victorious teams were willing to talk a bit more, so reporters weren't especially impatient. Continuing from last round where Blue Rain's Huang Xiaoshan suffered heavy injuries from cutting down a tree, Happy once again used a similar idea. Of course, the questioning began with this point. "Ha, that was entirely different. Huang Xiaoshan did that to himself," Ye Xiu said. "Fuck." Yu Wenzhou, who was watching the television, received more messages from Huang Xiaoshan, 2 in a row. First a curse and then, "I'm gonna kill that guy for sure. Do you know any assassins you could introduce me to?" Yu Wenzhou smiled and ignored him. The live crowd had burst into laughter, and Yu Wenzhou could understand how embarrassed Huang Xiaoshan must be. So what happened today was something that Happy purposely set up. A reporter continued to ask. "Of course," Ye Xiu said. "Could you talk about how this was accomplished? You must have made extensive preparations in many aspects, right?" The reporter pulled out the question they cared about the most, and everyone's gazes focused on Luo Jai. But unexpectedly, Ye Xiu answered this question first. "It wasn't necessary. Our player here has an exceptionally sensitive intuition for maps. After just one look, he can instantly figure out how to do it." "What?" All of the reporters were dumbstruck. The press conference actually quieted down completely. Luo Jai was sweating. Luo Jai was sweating waterfalls. Luo Jai was sweating Iguazu Falls. They were actually just going to say this. A bit unsettled, Luo Jai snuck a glance at Ye Xiu, only to see a completely calm and honest expression. After just one look, he can instantly figure out how to do it. Since when did he have that kind of demonic ability? In order to accurately create this enormous destruction, he had used who knew how many kilograms of draft paper just for his miscellaneous scratch work alone. Guan Rongfei had supplied a large amount of data and calculations on all sorts of aspects of the in-game physics as well. This was a strategy that had been prepared for a very long time. To use it in the regular season would be too wasteful, so they had saved it for the crucial elimination stage of the playoffs, to deliver a hammering blow. Before they had come to attend the press conference, Ye Xiu exhorted him to say this and that, but he had thought that Ye Xiu was kidding. But now he saw how, facing the camera lenses of so many reporters, Ye Xiu was so relaxed and composed as he lied. "You could just do it like that. What kind of power do you have?" When the reporters recovered, they instantly focused on Luo Jai again and even addressed him with the formal "you." Hearing this, Luo Jai became even more panicked. Of course, he could only say what he could. If he was wrong, so he muddled through a story. I was always pretty interested in Glory's map things, so I guess I have a certain amount of experience, and some intuition. It's probably just something like that. The reporters were too good at observing people. Ye Xiu was very calm, but this Luo Jai, he was still young and seemed to be a bit panicked. But when they thought again, this was a rookie, suddenly being surrounded as though he were a star. It would be fairly normal for him to be a bit nervous. So was it the truth? The reporters were wavering between belief and doubt. Watching the television, though, Yu Wenzhou was already laughing. How could such a thing be possible? As soon as you heard what he said, it was clearly something just to fool them. What kind of idiot would actually believe that? In the away team prep room, Tyranny hadn't yet left. When the conference reached this point, the prep room instantly quieted down. Song Qiying hurriedly made his way next to Zhang Xinji. Vice Captain, Senior Ye Xiu just said that they hadn't prepared this beforehand. It was just an on-the-spot plan. Then even in their away game, they might be able to do it again. Idiot, how could you believe that? That guy Ye Xiu is purposely trying to make this a mystery. Zhang Jiao immediately came over to teach Song Qiying. Is that so? Song Qiying was at a loss. He continued to watch the television and heard Luo Jai's speech. Experience and intuition, Song Qiying muttered, sneaking a glance at Zhang Jiao. Look at him, he was clearly taught to say that by Ye Xiu, Zhang Jiao told Song Qiying. Song Qiying didn't say anything and looked at Zhang Xinji. That kind of experience and intuition, is there such a thing? Zhang Xinji was saying. Are you an idiot too? Zhang Jiao was all sorts of speechless. We have severely insufficient data in this area. It may be necessary to reevaluate, said Zhang Xinji. Chapter 15-17. Next round. Chapter 15-17. Next round. Translator. Namiyami editor. Namiyami. The post-match interviews from Happy led to a heated debate. There were people who believed it, but there were many who didn't. The reporters asked for the logic behind their reasoning, wanting to earnestly understand what they meant by experience and intuition of the terrain. But Happy pushed all of their questions away, even those from Esport Home's Chang Xian, who had a very close relationship with them. Happy stated, a great battle is imminent. As Happy's secret weapon, Luo Jai does not have the leisure to play around. He needs to use his time to continue tempering his experience and intuition of the terrain. He wasn't able to display his true strength last round. It was our home game after all. Next round will be the true test. Ye Xiu told Chang Xian, who had come to him directly to talk. Are you serious? Although Chang Xian had a good relationship with Happy and supported the team, he didn't believe it personally. It wasn't just him. Anyone with a certain understanding of glory would have their doubts. The ones who immediately gasped in surprise were noobs who didn't have the skill to see it. Chang Xian was a professional reporter who followed the glory scene closely. His own individual skill at glory might not be anything noteworthy, but his perception of the game could not compare to a normal player. After hearing Ye Xiu's words, he looked left and right, confirming that there was no one else around. He lowered his voice and asked, is this psychological warfare? Haha, yes, it's psychological warfare. Ye Xiu nodded his head and laughed. Chang Xian wanted to cry. Ye Xiu told him yes, but he had said it half-heartedly. Was he supposed to believe it or not? Sure enough, his minuscule skills were far from enough in front of this god. Then, I'll just have to wait and see. Chang Xian could only helplessly say some nonsense and leave with a laugh. Bye. Ye Xiu said his goodbyes to Chang Xian before returning to Happy's practice room. Everyone was there in front of their computers. The atmosphere in the room was quite casual. The time between games in the playoffs was even more tight than the regular season. The teams had to rush back and forth between venues, which used up a good amount of their time on travel. As a result, a stable practice schedule between games such as in the regular season couldn't be done in the playoffs. Most of their practice was to maintain their conditions. If the regular season required consistency, then the playoffs required explosiveness. An explosiveness that used everything you had. The ones who could persist until the end would be the winners. The ones who relaxed would likely be the ones to fall in the playoffs. Happy had won the first match of the second round. It was something to be happy about, but it was far too early to celebrate. It looked like everyone understood this point. Everyone was using their own methods to reflect on the outcome of the match in preparation for the next match. Did he leave? Chen Guo asked Ye Xiu. She didn't lower her voice, afraid of bothering the others. The current atmosphere was their usual daily one. If there was something someone wanted to say, then they could just say it. It wasn't a practice session where they needed to focus intensely on their playing. He left. How did you say it? Chen Guo asked. Luo Jai is a secret weapon. How can we let them interview him so easily? Ye Xiu patted Luo Jai's shoulders as he sighed. Luo Jai's body went soft. He turned his head with difficulty. Isn't that not good? Relax, it has nothing to do with you. Ye Xiu laughed. Luo Jai wanted to cry. What do you mean it has nothing to do with me? Right now, everyone in Glory was talking about him. Making one's name after a single battle described this situation exactly. That night, his four-beast summon style was no longer called that. People gave it another name, building demolition style. It looked like there were countless people who thought he was a demolition specialist who could instantly see through the terrain and destroy it. Luo Jai obviously understood why Ye Xiu insisted on saying it like that. However, as a rookie, he was completely unprepared for this psychological warfare which completely distorted the truth. Luo Jai discovered that the world was far scarier than he had imagined. It really has nothing to do with you, Ye Xiu continued. What comes next is something tyranny has to worry about. Is that so? Then next match. Of course you'll be playing next match. Even if we don't use the atomic bomb, just having it there is very intimidating. Ye Xiu said. Atomic bomb. Luo Jai felt his body go soft again. Do you really think that it'll scare tyranny? Chen Guo spoke up. After a match, she would scour the forums. From what she read, the more persuasive posters were saying that Ye Xiu was just making stuff up. Glory had an enormous player base, so there would naturally be many experts in the game. Many people were already pointing out what needed to be done. Chen Guo knew the truth and felt like Ye Xiu's psychological warfare was rather naive this time. Of course it won't scare them. Ye Xiu said, nothing can scare tyranny, but it'll leave a thorn in their hearts. Even if it's just a teeny-tiny advantage, we still have to take it. Okay? Chen Guo nodded her head and didn't say anything more. To do everything they could meant taking those 1%, 0.1%, 0.01% chances. That was what Ye Xiu was saying. Ever since he started in the 10th server, he had always done this. Team tyranny. After the match, they took a flight back to City Q and began preparations for their home game. Similar to Happy, Tyranny wouldn't do any strenuous training between playoff games. However, their vice-captain Zhang Xinji didn't seem to have a relaxed attitude right now. When Lin Jingyan went over to see what he was doing in the practice room, he saw that Zhang Xinji was studying the full moon forest map that Happy had chosen last round. His character was looking at the floor that Happy had completely collapsed, leading to Tyranny's demise. Do you really believe him? Lin Jingyan grabbed a chair and sat beside Zhang Xinji. He watched him study the area as he asked. Not really, Zhang Xinji said. Not really meant that there was some leeway. With Zhang Xinji's personality, he wanted to erase that final bit of leeway. Lin Jingyan knew that he couldn't stop him. It was just the way Zhang Xinji was. It had its advantages, but it had its disadvantages. Ye Xiu was poking at this weak spot. His words might not be able to cheat others, but it would work on Zhang Xinji. It wouldn't trick Zhang Xinji, but it would divert his attention away. There were only 3 days away until the next match. Would Zhang Xinji be able to clear away his doubts by then? It wasn't that Lin Jingyan didn't trust his teammate, but he really didn't look favorably on Zhang Xinji towards this issue. He had seen of the comments related to this topic and agreed with the commentary. Happy collapsing that entire area had nothing to do with experience or skill at glory, but science. Science. Those words felt so distant to Lin Jingyan. He had worked hard in the pro scene for 9 years and understood the scene well. Let alone science, most players of the game weren't on the high end of the spectrum in terms of knowledge. The number of competitive players with high educational backgrounds were rather limited. After all, the competitive scene emphasized youth. University graduates would be considered elderly when thrown with new players. Zhang Xinji. Zhang Xinji may be called a master tactician with an intelligent mind, but in terms of academics, he was probably at a high school level no. Last night, he had looked at some very detailed analysis. The poster had included higher-level math like differential equations. Just looking at it gave Lin Jingyan a nightmare. Wouldn't it be better to give it to the R&D department to look at? Lin Jingyan advised. The R&D department is already looking into it. Zhang Xinji was Zhang Xinji. He had already done what Lin Jingyan had thought of. Oh, Lin Jingyan nodded his head then. There was no then. The R&D department was already analyzing it, but Zhang Xinji was still analyzing it himself too. That was it. Lin Jingyan didn't say anything more. He turned on the computer nearby. The 2 playoffs team that had finished their matches were preparing for the next round. That night, it was the match between Tiny Herb and Samsara, which would be taking place in City B in Tiny Herb's home stadium. In the end, Samsara won their away game, beating Tiny Herb 11-7. Tiny Herb had lost their home game. It was a rather bad outlook for them, but it wasn't outside of people's expectations. The pre-match analysis had Samsara with a higher chance of winning, even if they were against the 2-time champions Tiny Herb. Before the match, the topic of who would become the next excellent era and be the second team to win 3 championships. After this round, the answer seemed to have already come. It was as if this best of 3 was already over. Then, what about the other best of 3? Happy versus Tyranny. The second match came as scheduled. But looking at the online polls, Happy's home game win didn't increase Happy's winning chances this round. In fact, it actually went down, because this match would be Tyranny's home game. Even if you didn't like Tyranny, no one thought that Tyranny would stumble because of their loss in the first game. Even if such an unprecedented reversal had happened last round, Tyranny's heroes wouldn't fall so easily. City Q, Tyranny's home stadium. The 2 teams lined up under the spotlight. How are things going? Have you found a way to win? Ye Xiu provoked Tyranny. What do you think? Han Wenqing wasn't as wordy as Ye Xiu, but he never lost out in vigor. Little Zhang, good luck. Ye Xiu called Zhang Xinji Little Zhang. There were only a few players in the Glory Alliance that had the qualifications to say that. Zhang Xinji chuckled. This sort of psychological attack would do nothing to him. You're really boring. Zhang Jiao talked back to Ye Xiu soon after. Not coming to Happy is actually the biggest mistake you've made in your career, Ye Xiu said to Zhang Jiao. Fuck off, Zhang Jiao cursed. Mistake was ear-piercing enough. There was even an actually in front. What did that mean? Chapter 15:18, Normal People Chasing After the Footsteps of Geniuses. Chapter 15:18, Normal People Chasing After the Footsteps of Geniuses. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami Tyranny's home fans were unfriendly towards Happy and Ye Xiu in particular. Ye Xiu didn't care though. After shaking hands with Tyranny's players, he waved his hands towards the crowd, triggering a flood of boos. A few rather impulsive fans thought of their loss in the last round and immediately started throwing random objects at him. The security quickly put a stop to them and escorted them out. Ha ha ha, Ye Xiu laughed, not in the least concerned. After greeting each other, the 2 teams went to their designated seats. But when they looked again, they saw that Ye Xiu hadn't gone down. He was still standing there on the stage. What's the meaning of this? He would be Happy's first player for the group arena. But the problem was that this wasn't Happy's home game, it was Tyranny's, yet he stood there heroically. The Happy fans were quite excited seeing this scene, but the boos from the Tyranny fans quickly drowned them out. Ye Xiu had come onto the stage, waved his hands to the crowd, and stayed on the stage. The match hadn't even started yet, and boos had been thrown his way 3 times already. "How capable," Ye Xiu heard someone say from the side. He turned his head to see who it was. Lin Jingyan hadn't gone down from the stage and stayed as well. "Ha ha," Ye Xiu laughed, "I can hear it. They're booing you, booing your lack of creativity." As soon as he said those words, the boos suddenly turned into applause, turning into the background for Lin Jingyan, who had come over to talk to Ye Xiu. It became even more obvious who the booing was for and who the applause was for. Thank you for the applause." Ye Xiu turned around and waved his hands enthusiastically to the crowd. Tyranny's fans suddenly didn't know what to do. It was really hard to grasp the timing for booing Ye Xiu and applauding Lin Jingyan. Lin Jingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wasn't capable of doing something like this, but at the same time, he was secretly feeling a bit envious of Ye Xiu's shamelessness. In the end, Tyranny's fans couldn't endure it any longer. The applause turned into boos again, and Ye Xiu immediately acted like the boos weren't for him. Lin Jingyan couldn't help but laugh. Don't look at how this was hate, not love. The two sides had quite the understanding of each other. When the day came that Ye Xiu no longer stood on the stage, Tyranny's fans would probably miss these interactions. As for Ye Xiu, was it because he knew that he would one day have to leave this stage that he teased Tyranny's fans endlessly? In reality, he probably wasn't admiring Ye Xiu's shamelessness, but his lively interactions with Glory fans. As for himself, he had a group of die-hard fans rooting for him, but right now were they looking at him? Lin Jingyan actually became depressed for some time, up until Ye Xiu came over and called out to him. "So Tyranny sent you to kill yourself?" "Ha ha ha," Lin Jingyan laughed dryly. If Han Wenqing or Zhang Jiao were in his place, they would probably respond with "who knows who'll be the one to die." But not Lin Jingyan. From the very beginning, he was different from players like Ye Xiu, Han Wenqing, and Zhang Jiao. Those players were geniuses. It only took one look to know that they were destined to stand at the top of Glory. As for himself, Lin Jingyan knew that he wasn't a genius of any kind. He was just one among the many who chased after the footsteps of those geniuses. Fortunately, he was able to get very close to these geniuses. Unfortunately, he was left behind despite his efforts, never able to reach the same heights as them. Nothing could be done. Because there was no rule saying that genius couldn't work hard either. The genius in front of him put in no less effort than he had. Those geniuses never thought of giving others a chance to catch up. "Being with you guys for so many years has truly been exhausting," Lin Jingyan suddenly said. "Hm." Ye Xiu stared blankly at him. Lin Jingyan's words had come out of nowhere. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. "It's too bad. I also have goals that I won't give up on," Lin Jingyan said. "Oh, you're very spirited today," Ye Xiu said. "Yes, I'm going to win," Lin Jingyan said. "Let's see you try," Ye Xiu smiled. "See you in game. See you in game." The two shook hands and went to their respective player booths. The big screen in the stadium displayed the names of the two competitors. Team Happy, Ye Xiu, Lord Grim. Team Tyranny, Lin Jingyan, Dark Thunder. When the time came, the referee confirmed that the players were ready, and the match officially went underway. It was clear who would be playing first in the group arena. The next question was what type of map would Tyranny choose? "It's the arena." Everyone was taken aback. Team Tyranny had unexpectedly chosen the most commonly picked 1v1 map for the all-important playoff stage, the arena. This map had the highest pick rate in the game because it was the smallest, simplest, and most direct. This style fit Tyranny quite well, but maps weren't chosen for the sake of simplicity. Picking the map was equivalent to giving the home team the initiative. The chosen map was the home team's first attack towards the away team. It could affect the momentum of the entire match. However, Tyranny had chosen the arena. Picking this plain and simple map was the same as giving up their home team advantage. What's more, Happy's Ye Xiu liked this map. In the regular season, Happy would often this type of map in the individual competition. For Tyranny to choose this map, had a spy infiltrated the team. Coach Li, what's the meaning behind choosing this map? Pan Lin asked Li Yibo for his opinion. This map couldn't have been chosen on the spur of the moment, especially with Zhang Xinji planning Tyranny's strategies. There must be a reason behind picking this map, Li Yibo said. This time, Li Yibo wasn't just trying to get out of saying anything meaningful. These were his actual thoughts. Unfortunately for him, Pan Lin misunderstood, thinking that Li Yibo was just joking around. As a result, he followed up with the usual "okay, then let's wait and see," leaving Li Yibo hanging. Li Yibo wanted to say something but hesitated because the match had begun. The arena was as simple as a map could be. The setting was that there was no setting. As soon as the characters loaded in, there was no time for Li Yibo to make any introductions. The two characters chosen by Happy and Tyranny were already at the center of the map. Lord Grim, Dark Thunder. This map. Did you pick it just for me? Ye Xiu asked in the chat. Chapter 1519, Unintelligent Lin Jingyan. Chapter 1519, Unintelligent Lin Jingyan. Translator, Namiyami. Editor, Namiyami. Yeah, I chose it for you, Lin Jingyan replied. Dark Thunder charge. Lin Jingyan has made the move. Pan Lin immediately called out. He was a bit surprised. Up until now, no one had given any trouble to Ye Xiu's Lord Grim in direct combat. Tyranny choosing such a straightforward map was surprising enough. Lin Jingyan making the first move only added to that surprise. Could Tyranny have found a way to counter the unspecialized blitz? Pan Lin continued. But soon afterwards, Dark Thunder was sent flying away. Pan Lin was dumbstruck. That didn't look like someone who found a way to counter an unspecialized. Lord Grim gave chase and began his counterattack. Pan Lin continued to commentate passionately, while Li Yibo remained silent. He carefully watched the fight between Lin Jingyan and Ye Xiu. He was also wondering whether Tyranny had found a way to counter Ye Xiu's unspecialized. After all, besides Ye Xiu, the most experienced players in the Glory Alliance were the players in Tyranny. The unspecialized playstyle required ample experience to support it. Perhaps the only players who could find a way to break it were the ones in Tyranny. But in just 3 moves, Dark Thunder only had a chance to attack 3 times before being sent flying by Lord Grim. Li Yibo didn't see any signs of Lin Jingyan figuring out the unspecialized playstyle. Instead, all he felt from Lin Jingyan was that the fast unspecialized playstyle was rendering him helpless. But when Ye Xiu counterattacked, the defense from Lin Jingyan was as taut as ever. He didn't run away or kite him. None of the dirtiness from his days with Fang Rui appeared either. Lin Jingyan looked as if he wanted to beat Ye Xiu in direct combat. Competing against the opponent's strength with one's weakness seemed like he was letting his emotions affect his decisions no matter how it was spun. However, how could someone as experienced as Lin Jingyan make such a low-level mistake? What is Tyranny planning? Li Yibo searched for an answer. Many people were searching for an answer. Bang, bang, bang. After another intense exchange, the two once again separated. So sharp. Ye Xiu smiled. Yeah, Lin Jingyan replied. Dark Thunder charged forward again. Lin Jingyan was clearly losing. Dark Thunder had lost more than 20% of his health, while Lord Grim had lost less than 10% of his. However, Lin Jingyan didn't make any adjustments. He kept doing the same as before and fought him directly even if it looked like there was no chance of him beating Ye Xiu this way. Lord Grim dodged, turned around, and ran away. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. The way Ye Xiu was playing didn't seem to have any problems, but right now he seemed to be running away. Ye Xiu was running away from Lin Jingyan. Was Lin Jingyan's way of fighting really that threatening? Of course, to the normal players, Lin Jingyan would crush them. But when looking at a competitive match, it had to be looked at in terms of professional play. Even if you said that Lin Jingyan's attacks were giving Ye Xiu trouble, the amount of trouble it was giving was very limited. No. From their last exchange, it was obvious that Ye Xiu had won that trade. However, why would someone who had the advantage choose to run away and go on the defensive? There was no time for everyone to think too much because Lin Jingyan had set his heart on his methods. Dark Thunder turned around and gave chase to Lord Grim, attacking again. Lord Grim retreated another step, Dark Thunder advanced another step. Then there was nowhere to run to. Lin Jingyan was an experienced general. He wasn't going to let Ye Xiu run away as he pleased. He would think of some way to corner his opponent. If the terrain was richer in content, there would be more space and more options to choose from when escaping. But the arena was a small map without any obstacles. The only way to run was by using one's own movements. There was limited room to run, too. The arena was only so big. After running away twice, Ye Xiu was forced into a corner. As a result, he counterattacked. Cold light intertwined with the occasional sounds of clashing weapons. Dark Thunder's weapon was the most common brawler weapon, a claw which consisted of sharp blades. Blood would fly into the air every time the blades cut. Fast. The two were attacking and defending extremely fast. This was a contest of hand speed and reaction speed. The viewers could only watch the spectacle in awe. They couldn't see what attacks they were using and whether it was effective. Their only choice was to look at their health bars to determine who was winning. Ye Xiu was winning. Lin Jingyan's brawler wasn't a match for Ye Xiu's unspecialized in direct combat. From this point it seemed like it was obvious who would win the match. However, Lin Jingyan didn't retreat or give up. He persisted, insisting on using this sort of method to decide the winner. Applause. The crowd applauded. Brawlers could fight close range or long range. They had CC and burst damage. They were an extremely versatile class. Fang Rui was Lin Jingyan's most important and reliable partner for many years. To synergize with him, he had adjusted his playstyle, and that was during the later parts of his career. Before that, Lin Jingyan was an aggressive player who liked direct combat. Demon Subduer. Just hearing his former brawler's name, how did that sound like someone who sneaked around and used dirty tricks? The Lin Jingyan of that time had been chasing after the footsteps of the geniuses. When fighting against them, Lin Jingyan didn't want to show fear. Even if he lost, he would stand straight until he fell. Now that he was thinking about it, he had fallen numerous times, but he had never cowered. Even when he had adjusted his playstyle to not be as aggressive, he had never cowered. He had ambitions too. For his dream to be the champion, he could give up on everything. To bring back the wild days as Demon Subduer, he could do that too. Tiger Flips the Mountain, Double Crescent, Pain of Scars. A bright red streak of blood blossomed into the air. As Lord Grim retreated, blood poured out from his right shoulder. "Oh, Demon Subduer, it's been a long time," Ye Xiu said. "Are you scared?" Lin Jingyan spoke as if he were Ye Xiu. Dark Thunder Charge. The Demon Subduer here wasn't referring to the one that Tang Hao was using in Team Wind Howl, but the three-hit brawler combo that Lin Jingyan often used back in the day. It was precisely because of this three-hit combo that he included the name 3 in the name Demon Subduer. His team saw this connection, and so the three-hit combo was named Demon Subduer as well. CTL note at the end of the chapter, however, as glory developed and levels increased, more skills became available. Lin Jingyan's famous three-hit combo gradually became outdated. Nowadays, it was rarely used and couldn't be considered a signature move. If his opponent wasn't Ye Xiu and a younger generation player, they might not have recognized the three-hit combo from Dark Thunder. "Haha, I was never scared. You know that," Ye Xiu said. Lord Grim faced him again. Lin Jingyan's move had been sudden. Ye Xiu had been caught off guard. But if it was this skill, then even when Lin Jingyan had used it in the past, he indeed had never been afraid of it, let alone now when it had fallen behind the times. Take a look at it again, Lin Jingyan called out. You still want to use it? Ye Xiu disapproved. Get ready. Lin Jingyan wasn't going to use it again. He already knew that suddenly using this skill to catch him off guard might give him some benefit, but using this secret weapon again would be a joke. The reason it had become outdated was because it had no value anymore. He didn't mind bluffing, though. I'm ready. If you use it, I'll beat you to death, Ye Xiu said. On the other hand, he wasn't bluffing. He was threatening him, and it was a real threat too. Nowadays, if Lin Jingyan used it, it would be considered an opening. Taking advantage of an opening to kill the opponent was the duty of a player. Sure enough, Lin Jingyan didn't use it again. The two continued to trade blows, and the applause continued. Lin Jingyan's strategy was somewhat stupid. The current him could definitely play smarter. Perhaps by doing so, he would be able to contend with Ye Xiu to the end. But this was Tyranny's home stadium, and the ones supporting him were Tyranny's fans. Lin Jingyan's strategy might not be smart, but it was exactly what they wanted to see. People might say that playing smarter would give them a higher chance of winning, but sorry, Tyranny's people love to use this sort of brute force method to win. This was what the fans wanted and what they hoped their team could prove. Team Tyranny was changing and they couldn't control it. However, Lin Jingyan's fighting style right now was something they enjoyed from the bottom of their hearts. It was because of this that they liked Tyranny. Go, beat Ye Xiu. Lin Jingyan didn't hold the advantage, but Tyranny's fans didn't care. From their energy, it seemed as if Lin Jingyan was suppressing Ye Xiu. Can you see what Tyranny is trying to do? Huang Xiaoshan, who had run to Tyranny's stadium to watch the game, messaged Yu Wenzhou. They're trying to wear him down, Yu Wenzhou replied. Wear down. Huang Xiaoshan was no stranger to this word. It was a rather painful phrase to him. That was their strategy in their game against Happy, wear down Ye Xiu in the group arena. But it turned out that Ye Xiu wore down their energy instead. Team Tyranny was doing the same strategy, wear down Ye Xiu. It was just that their method was different. They chose the simplest map and simplest method to wear down Tyranny. Wear him down with brute force. Chapter 1520, Unavoidable Exhaustion. Chapter 1520, Unavoidable Exhaustion. Translator, Namyami Editor. Namyami. Lin Jingyan fought like a hero and fell like a hero. He had expected this outcome. Having chased after the footsteps of those geniuses for so many years, he knew that these geniuses weren't like the lazy hare and the tortoise and the hare. They wouldn't leave any room for others to surpass them. You can't let me win once, Lin Jingyan said jokingly. You've won before, no, Ye Xiu replied. Season 4, Round 21. Lin Jingyan stared blankly for a while before saying, I lose to you even in memory. The first round of the group arena ended in 1 minute 48 seconds. Between two players with abundant experience, it could be considered an extremely fast battle. In the end, Ye Xiu won with a huge lead. Lord Grimm had 63% of his health left. When Lin Jingyan left the stage, the crowd didn't hold back with the applause. A loss was a loss, but Lin Jingyan's attitude was what they wanted to see. Even though it might not have been the smart thing to do, Tyranny's fans liked to see this sort of hot-blooded fervor from their heroes. Go Tyranny! It was as if Tyranny was winning. Their fans seemed even more excited than Happy's. Tyranny's second player appeared on the big display, Zhang Jiao dazzling 100 blossoms, another old general from Tyranny. Amidst the applause, Zhang Jiao walked towards the stage and met Lin Jingyan midway over. Nice job, Zhang Jiao said. The rest is up to you, Lin Jingyan said. Watch me take him down, Zhang Jiao said. The two bumped fists and Zhang Jiao walked onto the stage. Soon the second round began. Go die, Zhang Jiao typed into the chat as soon as he loaded into the map. Then his 100 blossoms bloomed. Dazzling 100 blossoms seemed to explode. The shimmering light spread throughout the arena with him as the center. Offense, another aggressive offense. Just like Lin Jingyan, he went for direct attacks without any tricks. The wave of blossoms swept over Lord Grimm. With this small arena, there was practically nowhere to hide. Zhang Jiao's strategy couldn't be considered a group arena strategy. In the group arena, no one would be as wasteful as this because your opponent was never just one person. If you only cared about a win over the opponent in front of you, if you lost the group arena, then that win wouldn't matter. Tyranny, are they planning on giving up on the group arena? Pan Lin couldn't help but blurt out. Li Yibo furrowed his brows, unsure what to say. Exhaustion. He had a grasp of tyranny's intentions. He wasn't certain about it, though, so he didn't say out into the broadcast. But by the looks of it, if their intent was to exhaust Ye Xiu, wouldn't the price be too large? The Spitfire was a mana-hungry class. With Zhang Jiao not caring about his mana, and using everything he had to display his 100 Blossom style, even if Ye Xiu lost, how much mana would dazzling 100 Blossoms have left to deal with Happy's next player? Engulfed by the wave of light, Lord Grimm's figure turned blurry. For Ye Xiu, this was a difficult problem. He was obviously aware of Tyranny's intentions to exhaust him, but in this map, the other side didn't care that Ye Xiu would notice because their arrangements were such that even if he knew, there was nothing he could do to avoid it. Unless Ye Xiu gave up on winning and let Lord Grimm stand there for them to kill, in which case, that would be great too. Otherwise, in such a small map facing such experienced players, there was no way for him to kite around and relax. Last round was like this, and this round would be the same. Team Tyranny didn't hide their intent. If you don't go all out, then you'll be killed instantly. If you go all out, then you will certainly expend quite a bit of energy. It was true that Tyranny's side had old players too, but they were taking turns fighting Ye Xiu. On Happy's side, after listening to Fang Rui's and Wei Chen's analysis, Chen Guo suddenly became worried. But after thinking about it for a bit, she suddenly thought of something. In any case, Ye Xiu has taken down Lin Jingyan. We're already in the lead. He can just play casually and use up the other side's mana. We'll still be winning in that case, Chen Guo said. Oh, is that so? Boss, what a good plan, Fang Rui said. Of course, Chen Guo was delighted. But a second later she discovered that Fang Rui's reply had been somewhat sarcastic. The others on Happy didn't think much of her good plan, did they? What's wrong with it? Chen Guo's ideas were often demolished by Ye Xiu, so she was very self-conscious. No one immediately replied. Everyone's focus was on the match. Ye Xiu didn't retreat. Instead, he faced Zhang Jiao boldly just like in his fight with Lin Jingyan. Everyone's expression was solemn as they watched the match. Chen Guo didn't keep asking what was wrong with her good plan. It was unlikely that Ye Xiu wouldn't have thought of her plan, so there must be a reason why he wouldn't choose to use it. The battle was as intense as the previous round. Both sides knew each other well, and the intense, fast-paced battle didn't lack caution either. The entire stage was a chaotic mess of light. If last round people couldn't tell what each player was doing exactly, then this match with Zhang Jiao's all-out light blossoms, there was very little left of what they could see. The only thing they could clearly see were their health bars. Fast. Their health bars were dropping very fast. The difference was that Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm was dropping steadily. He clearly wasn't ever able to cleanly escape from the grasps of the 100 Blossom style. As for dazzling 100 Blossoms, his health dropped intermittently. It was just that each drop in health was quite considerable. Bite him to death. Happy's players and Happy's fans were praying with all their might. If Lord Grimm could stick close to him, he might be able to interrupt dazzling 100 Blossom's fierce assault. Then in close combat, Spitfires would be at a huge disadvantage. In the regular season, Zhang Jiao had been burst to death this way. But this time, it clearly wasn't going to be so easy. Zhang Jiao, who was going all out, had blocked off everything. Too crazy. Huang Xiaoshan felt his heart tremble. With the way he's playing, let alone the next player, If Lord Grimm had started with over 70% of his health, dazzling 100 blossoms might not even have had enough mana for this round alone, Yu Wenzhou replied. Zhang Jiao had let go of everything. His eyes had been set on Lord Grimm, who hadn't even started out with full health. Lord Grimm had started with only 63% of his health left. His energy, his decision-making, and his attacks were all concentrated on that 63%. Only by doing this could he give Ye Xiu the most pressure. It was only by doing this could he make it so that Ye Xiu would not be able to afford to relax. This round could not be defined as simply as who won or lost. Tyranny's strategy was being carried out in this forceful way. As for Ye Xiu, since he couldn't avoid getting exhausted, then he could only do his best to win as much of a lead as possible for Happy. As for what the outcome would be, it wasn't just this round that had to be looked at, but the entire match. 1 minute 24 seconds. The battle between Ye Xiu and Zhang Jiao had been even faster than the battle with Lin Jingyan. In the end, the first to fall was Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm. However, Zhang Jiao's dazzling 100 blossom was useless at this point. He only had 9% of his health and 2% of his mana left. Ye Xiu wasn't able to complete a 1v2, but it was very close. When left the player booth, Happy's fans applauded wildly. This was Tyranny's home stadium. Happy's fans knew of Tyranny's enmity with Ye Xiu. They had no way of suppressing Tyranny's fans in their home stadium, so it was only by taking these openings could they show their support to Ye Xiu. Unexpectedly, boos didn't come immediately from Tyranny's fans. This despicable guy has his decent moments. Tyranny's fans were in a discussion. Ye Xiu fought head-on against the aggression put out from Tyranny. It was what Tyranny's fans liked to see. As a result, even if Ye Xiu was their mortal enemy, they hesitated. His playing today is pretty okay. Let's booze a bit softer, someone suggested. As a result, the boos still came, but they were light as a feather. What's going on? Ye Xiu wasn't used to it. As he walked down from the stage, he saw that Tyranny's fans weren't putting in much effort to boo him like usual. Now you know what fear is. Ye Xiu smirked as he said these words to the audience members nearest to him. Fuck! The audience members heard him, and their boos immediately intensified. The reason was soon spread throughout the stadium. Fuck, and now he's proud of himself. Tyranny's fan leader and Tyrannical Ambitions guild leader, Jiang Yu, felt the urge to flip a table. Boo him! Boo him! Jiang Yu roared. The boos once again echoed loudly throughout the stadium. There were even some "kill him" shouts mixed in. Ye Xiu was as calm as ever. Happy's next player wasn't affected by these sudden boos from Tyranny's fans. Happy's next player was Mo Fan. He had already become an important chess piece in Happy's group arena. Good luck, Ye Xiu said as they passed each other. Mo Fan didn't stop. He simply nodded his head and kept walking. Ye Xiu returned to his seat. The others looked at him. Almost a 1v2, Ye Xiu grinned. Chen Guo immediately noticed the weariness in Ye Xiu's smile. He couldn't hide his exhaustion. Chen Guo had seen this appearance before. It was the same as when he had fought against Wind Howl's Tang Hao. And today, Ye Xiu had fought a fierce battle against two players back-to-back. His opponents, Lin Jingyan and Zhang Jiao, were experienced players too. Since they came in with a purpose, they naturally knew how best to wear Ye Xiu down and make sure that Ye Xiu couldn't avoid it. The second round of the group arena ended. Ye Xiu left the stage. Tyranny had a practically useless dazzling 100 blossoms, yet Chen Guo felt a bad premonition in her heart.